Greetings! Welcome, one and all, to the ASTROLABE. What a beautiful day it is. It is almost 90 degrees here in South Central Texas, with reports that we're supposed to have record cold temperatures within the next couple of weeks. Apparently, record cold temperatures are supposed to hit most of the United States. There's a debate happening over whether these sorts of things are projectable or not, and how easily projectable they are this far out. But either way, I'm expecting, even if we don't get record cold temperatures, we're still probably going to get something like a 60-degree temperature swing in the next week. Fortunately, it's nice and dry, nice breeze. It's beautiful out there. It feels like California. There's one very, very good thing about California, about Southern California in particular, and that is the weather. And it is genuinely as good as you hear. Like, the people who are like, you know what, fuck it, like California is an absolute political mess, and I have to live with a bunch of communists, and you know what, the weather is worth it. I will pay that tax. I will pay that tax to experience that weather year round. It genuinely is that good. But yeah, there are other things. Shout out to Samoa Bob, a good friend of mine who is still lives down there, born and raised. We have good people. We have good people in Southern California, folks. I'll have you know. Shout out to random username in the chat. When I typed BTC mining in Texas into the title, I was appealing to him specifically. Haven't seen him around in a little while, and I figured we would bait him out with this one. What's up to all the regulars here in the chat? I see now on the studio management side of things here for YouTube, there's this goal feature, a super chat goal thing that they've integrated into this. Make super chat more fun with a goal. Set a goal to engage with your audience in a new way. Once you reach your goal, celebrate with your community. You can pick a goal here, number of super chats, choose the super chat colors that count. So YouTube is still innovating in some ways. I'll have to figure out how to integrate this. Share a goal you'll celebrate. I'll host a Q&A session. Well, I do Q&A sessions. I mean, you can come and ask me a question anytime. I'll have to come up with something. If you would like to support the show before we get started, there are a number of ways in the description. If you're listening to this on the podcast version afterwards, you'll see some links in the description, along with all of the links that I cover on the show today. If you would like to support the show, there's a number of ways you can do it down there. There's a Buy Me a Coffee. A number of you guys hit that over Christmas, and it's very, very much appreciated. I do this. This is just about a full-time gig right now. So, and you guys have been very, very generous. Still largely a labor of love. So, for those of you who want to support, we very much appreciate you. You can become a channel member for $5 a month. Become one of the King Pilled. You can also. There's a Buy Me a Coffee. I put the Cash App link in there, and then we got a couple of sponsors down there that you could support as well. If you support them, they support us. Everything is we all get fat and sassy and happy. A random Hulk Hogan drop when we hit the goal. Now that's an interesting thought. I'm gonna have to workshop this. I think we can start doing some fun stuff with it and get you guys involved and engaged more. I am consistently blown away at just how good the chat is for all of our shows here. Mir and Chuck Now, King Pilled, Astrolabe, P. Quinones. There's a whole bunch of Semiagog. All these guys out here, the Prudentialists, Jay Burden. The chats, the comment sections are just some of the best places on the internet. You guys are part of what makes the show go here. This is a new sort of model, I think, for I don't know. It's like. There was the news, the news, the talk radio. Talk radio had call-ins, so there was kind of a sort of an engagement feature to it, but it always sucked, and nobody likes call-in shows. And then you had podcasts, and then you had streams, and now you've got like these interactive streams where you interact with the chat, go back and forth. And the smaller size is actually a feature for that because you watch some of the big streamers, the guys. I was watching Asmongold the other day. And there's like no way he could possibly ever keep up with his chat. It's just flying past. Every once in a while, he might pick out a comment here and there, but so there's a tension here where like you want the show to be bigger, you want to reach more people, but also there's a great feature of being able to interact with the chat. And if the chat gets too big, then that feature kind of goes away. So for now, I'm grateful for where we're at. And white pills abound. There are just so many white pills as we round out the year of 2024. It's been a very interesting year. But I think 2025 2025 is going to be even more interesting, more chaotic. Lots of struggles and difficulties coming our way, but there's more opportunity and white pills and opportunities for prosperity and growth. And our trajectory is on its way up, just like the trajectory of the viewership on the show right now. I'm looking at the graph, and it is up and to the right. We like up and to the right. So do me a favor, hit the like button on your way in here, and we are going to get rocking and rolling here. Got some great slop to begin with. We actually, in the King Pill Discord, just created by popular demand, we created an additional channel called Wholesome Slop. So we have a meme thread where you can just post memes, which is probably the most active in there, honestly. The meme thread is constantly popping. We added a Wholesome Slop channel as well, because we are here at the Astrolabe and the King Pill community, broadly speaking, we are wholesome slop enjoyers. So we added a new channel there this last week, and it has been now popping as well. But we always start the show off with some wholesome slop. I don't even know if you'd call this slop. This is just straight up wholesome. This sets the vibe. Zarathustra, one of our great posters. Elon posted, please post a bit more positive, beautiful, or informative content on this platform. And then he's gone around retweeting a bunch of them. And this is one of the ones that he retweeted. And I would just like to say, we are so fucking back. Oh, man. I would just like to say I am an American, and you may want me to apologize for being an American, and it's not going to fucking happen. I'm an American. This is what it is right here. This is American spirit. Everyone wants to be an American because we're just that freaking good. Oh, the synth wave, yes. Okay. So check this out. We've been if you've been following the show here for the last several months, I've been tracking the developments in AI video technology, and it's just getting completely out of control. This is insane. This is Fade Out, a short film made with Google's VO2, which is in beta. It focuses on an aging rock star's final years, focused on film-like details, camera moves, lighting, textures, emotion, to craft a story, not just a montage. Watch this like intently. If you're just listening right now, stop what you're doing, pull out your phone, open up the tab, whatever it is, and watch this intently. And tell me if this was just dropped on the timeline, what cues would you pick out that this is not a real video? This is not real video of real people. This is AI video.
Have you ever felt it? That quiet ache in your chest? Like the world's just too goddamn big and you're just a ghost passing through. I've carried my heart in a suitcase, left pieces of it scattered in every corner of the world. Love, I had it, lost it, missed it, destroyed it. Life, lived it to the bone until it hollowed me out. I spent so much time looking down at the strings, the road, the bottle. I forgot to look up. The show's over and I'll cause a lie, but hey, time slips through your fingers faster than you think. You gotta live it loud and loathe like the world might end tomorrow. Because when the lights dim and the curtain falls, We are simply just fade out.
It's incredible how fast this stuff is improving. Here's a whole thread on it. Google's VO2 can generate YouTube and TikTok influencer videos. These are not real. Some of these have audio, most of them don't. This is so none of these videos here I'm about to show you guys are real. This is a product review. And I'm just going to say, like, this may not be super, I don't know, profound of an insight, but I think most people, nobody has adopted this into their normal, like, flow for evaluating the reality of what they're interacting with. There are 100% existing influencers who are entirely AI. There's, I guarantee you. I don't know if for sure any of them. I'm just saying I can reason to the point very easily that a lot of the people not a lot. I wouldn't say a lot, but a non-zero number of people that you interact with on the internet are not people. Here's another one, a tutorial video. It's just remarkable. A challenge video. This one's a lot more AI-like. Maybe AI doesn't do Asians well or something. I don't know. Vlog-style video. There's something that's a little unnatural about their mouths still, but you kind of have to stop and look at it for a minute. And this wasn't the case with the videos and stuff that were being produced 3 or 4 months ago. The upper lip is always the place that is in animation and stuff, when they try to make it more lifelike, there's always something about the upper lip. I don't know exactly what it is. I wonder if there's people who've done studies on that, but there's something about the upper lip that doesn't move naturally, or it's very difficult for animators or for AI video to make it move naturally. But that's very quickly going away. That one just looks real. That one, the mouth was a little weird. The teeth look weird on this one. The movement's not quite right. NPC style video. If you watch it for long enough, you can see the mouth looks, there's just something that's just a little bit unnatural about it. But if this trajectory continues, like, the Hollywood is going to be completely transformed. What this is going to do, and you know me, we're not going to black pill here. What this is going to do is put such a premium on demonstrably authentic, real videos. And this is with AI stuff in general, is it's going to put a premium on demonstrably authentic, real human creativity. The value of this stuff is just going to absolutely go through the roof. Dance videos. Yeah, that one's still pretty unrealistic. It's remarkable. You got to be updating your I don't know, your software, your operating system. You got to be staying on your toes these days. Boomers 100%, like, the people who are going to pick out the things that are wrong with this are the extremely online ones. The older generations are going to have absolutely zero clue. It's like there's the viral posts that go around of boomers replying to like very obviously like AI images of some I don't know, African kid who built a nuclear warp drive or whatever. They're like, wow, it's so amazing. It's incredible how he has 14 fingers. This stuff, they're not going to pick up on it whatsoever. We've got to look out for our older relatives because they're going to get suckered big time. The scam potential with all of this, there's a short period of time where it's going to exist, but it's going to be big. Isaac says every video will have to include some obvious tell that it's not AI. Yes, right. And you apply human creativity to this, and all sorts of different things are going to spring up, and people are going to start consolidating around specific ones. $5 super chat from Colin Ross. She says Jim Bob has been predicting for some time now that current celebs will sell their likeness to AI movie developers. There was something with this recently where what's her name? Scarlett Johansson, where some company used like an imprint of her voice. And I don't remember all the details of this. Maybe if some of you guys can remember. Don't remember all the details of it, but like they basically created an AI version of her voice, and then I think she was suing. She was at least very upset publicly about it. And I don't remember if she was actually suing or not. But yeah, it's going to create a very interesting new market as well for celebriries or would-be celebrities to traffic and this new products like AI images of yourself. 10 years from now, the world that we live in is going to be so dramatically different from the world that we live in now. Another super chat in here, $2 from random username. He says, "Dead internet theory." Yes. We've had many long conversations about dead internet theory, and yeah, I know random username is much more pessimistic about that than I am. Yeah, she was the voice for an AI in a movie, the one with what's his name from Joker, from Signs, Joaquin Phoenix. Never watched it, but I heard it was interesting and kind of creepy. Okay, a little white pill here. The state of Tennessee has just proposed eliminating property taxes for victims of Helene. Any families home that was affected by the flood will be exempt from paying property taxes for the year of 2024 and won't be taxed again until their property is made whole. This is very good. Very, very good. Anybody who wants to make your political imprint on some of these states, put together some sort of policy proposal for this sort of thing and force politicians into accepting it. Because this is going to be, there's not a single person, not a single good faith person who's going to be opposed to this sort of an idea. $5 super chat from Samoa Bob. He says, AI was a big part of the writer's strike and will be a part of the next SAG strike. Yeah, yep, that's true. It's going to this is the white pill side of all of this, is that there's obviously lots of potential negative externalities of all of this, as there has been with every major technological innovation. And the bright side of it is a lot of the things that are going to be undermined and destroyed with it, and already are being undermined and destroyed, are the things that are profoundly negative to the society at large, like Hollywood, journalism. I remember watching a thing with some VC guy a while back who was building an AI tool that would replace standard legacy press lib journalists. Because he's like, you notice all of them when they write, they just have there's like a voice. There's a voice. There's these like the standards for how to write, how to present certain ideas. There's like a dialect that they speak, and he was like, just train the AI to speak that dialect, and then they're going to be vastly more efficient. These little AI agents going around the internet, amassing all of this information, and then spitting it out. This is basically all that journalists are doing. The unique ones, the quality ones, have already moved over to something like Substack, or they're the exception that proves the rule within the major legacy institutions. This is just going to accelerate that. And got to give another shout out to Jason Miranchuk. We got to do one of these every single episode. This is the exact same process that's going to give us AI Congress. It's going to be informal at first, and over the next couple of decades, it's going to gradually be formalized. And that itself has good things and bad things to it. There's a formalization aspect to it. Another thing related to Hurricane Helene relief efforts. Old Glory Club did a stream. I believe it was Saturday night, right after I finished. For those of you who didn't realize, I did a Saturday Astrolabe to talk about some of the H1B stuff, and we're going to get into more of that here in a little bit. But right after that, the Old Glory Club did a fundraising stream. And they said, Old Glory Club tweeted out initially, thanks to the generosity of you loyal chuds, we were able to raise over $10,000 to continue assisting in hurricane relief. We cannot thank everyone who has donated enough. You are the ones that keep us going, to make this country great and make us proud to be Americans. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you. And then they corrected themselves, says, I appear to have made a mistake. We did not raise $10,000. We've actually raised $12,000, and the link to donate is still live. So I'm going to drop this here right now. There's the link to the PayPal. I'm going to drop this in the chat right now for anybody who wants to go donate. And I'll be putting this in the show notes afterwards, which you can access through kingpill.substack.com or by going to, let me pin this here, by going to the podcatchers and finding the audio version of this. All right, message is pinned up there. Go donate to the Old Glory Club's fundraising effort for hurricane relief. Update on this story. Ken Paxton tweets, we have successfully blocked the Biden administration from disposing of any further border wall materials before President Trump takes office. This follows our major victory, forcing Biden to build the wall, and we will hold his administration accountable for illegally subverting our nation's border security until their very last day in power, especially where their actions are clearly motivated by a desire to thwart President-elect Trump's immigration agenda. And here is the press release. Attorney General Ken Paxton secured a victory for President-elect Donald Trump's border security agenda during a hearing today before a federal judge. The hearing was called at Attorney General Paxton's request to uncover potential legal violations committed by the Biden administration after recent reports that segments of the border wall were auctioned off for pennies on the dollar. The Biden administration confirmed to the court today that it will agree to an order preventing the outgoing administration from disposing of any further border wall materials over the next 30 days, allowing President Trump to use those materials as he sees fit. This will be adopted as an order of the court, making it enforceable if any violations occur. Additionally, the court stated that Texas is entitled to documentation proving that the Biden administration has not violated an injunction secured by Attorney General Paxton in May of 2024 that required the Biden administration to spend statutorily obligated funds on border wall construction after the federal government attempted to illegally redirect the money. If it is shown that the Biden administration disposed of border wall materials purchased with funds subject to that injunction in violation of a court order, or that the Department of Justice made misrepresentations regarding the border materials that have been auctioned off, this would constitute unethical and sanctionable conduct, and the responsible parties could be held in contempt of court. Now, an interesting subtext to this story here is this injunction that required the Biden administration to spend statutorily obligated funds on border wall construction is they got to be careful with this, because from the rumors that are slipping out of the Trump administration circles, one of the bases of the entire DOGE effort, the desire to slash federal spending, get rid of a whole bunch of bureaucrats, even some agencies, reallocate those agencies out of DC, that entire effort, one of the key legal arguments they're going to be making is that the executive branch is not obligated to spend money that is authorized for certain purposes. Now, the basis of that, as I understand it, is going to be that they're going to place these agencies under audit. And placing them under audit, they're going to freeze those funds. And so there's a legal nuance here. There's a difference in this argument that it's that they're not obligated to spend money when it's demonstrable that this money is being fraudulently used, or it's being used for unconstitutional reasons, or for reasons that harm Americans. So there is a bit of a difference there, but these are some interesting thorny legal weeds that everyone's going to be tiptoeing through, and it's one of the big downsides of our lawyer-centric system is that you have to navigate your way through these sorts of thorny issues. I'm not saying that we need to take the entire Western legal tradition and just completely throw it out, but it is silly that you can, on one hand, need to make the case that this money has been allocated for this purpose, and this administration not spending that money for that purpose is a bad thing. But at the same time, you have to protect your flank and ensure that you're not setting the very legal precedent that will turn around and undermine your cause a few months down the line, when you want to make the case that the executive is not obligated to spend money that has been allocated to certain causes because they deem those causes fraudulent or a waste of money or harmful or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, bad people are bad and wrong, and good people are good and right. And it's a pain in the ass that you have to go through all of this inane Jewish bullshit to establish that case. Okay, some Bitcoin stuff. I've played a couple of clips of Eric Trump talking about Bitcoin, and this is another good one, and it's a very strong signal. He makes some interesting points in here, and then we'll talk about the BTC mining in Texas.
I'm at the Bitcoin conference because I believe in cryptocurrencies. I believe that cryptocurrencies are the future. Banking is slow as hell. It's antiquated. It doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense that banks run on 9-to-5 schedules 5 days a week. When cryptocurrency, you can trade it in the middle of the night on a Saturday at 12 p.m. While having dinner with your wife or sitting on the couch, you can trade cryptocurrency. The banks are lethargic. They don't work for everybody. They leave those people behind. They're expensive. They're lethargic. They're not inclusive at all.
I think he believes that banks are lethargic. That's a bad pause. There we go. Better pause. This is one. So as we enter 2025, we're going to be one of the major crises hitting the entire global economy is liquidity. There's going to be a major liquidity crisis. Now, the United States is positioned and positioning to better handle that than just about anybody else. But I want to connect those ideas here because this particular facet of the market, I understand the Bitcoin maxi, there's no such thing as cryptocurrency, it's Bitcoin. I understand. Yes. However, having this feature of the market being able to trade 24/7 round the clock and opening that up to where trading hours are not 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, but establishing a new market basis for trading there's no reason why in 2025 in the digital age we can't have 24/7 round the clock trading. I mean, I'm sure there's some niche reason why you want this constraint there, whatever. The fact of the matter is that had the digital age existed when stock markets were created, there wouldn't have been these time constraints placed on trading. And this particular point is something that I've heard from a bunch of different people, all orbiting the Trump administration, or in this case, directly in the midst of it, that a sailor has made this point as well, that there's no reason why we need to have our markets constrained to only be trading 9 to 5 Monday to Friday.
And I think the modern banking system is changing very quickly. I think it's one of the reasons you see BlackRock spending billions in cryptocurrencies, and Fidelity and Schwab and just about every bank under the sun. It's the future. I mean, why do I have to go all over Abu Dhabi to try and find an ATM if I want to pull out $100? By the time you pull out the money, you lose 30% on it based on currency exchange rates plus fees for the ATM. When you can literally pop open your wallet, you can send a link. It takes you 2 seconds to do, and you don't have all those problems. You don't have all those structural problems. So there's no question to me that times 100, right? Blockchain. There's nothing that can be done in banking that can't be done more efficiently using blockchain. And blockchain is changing the world, whether or not people like it or not. And there's a lot of people that see it. The people who are here at this conference. There's a lot of people who don't. The people who don't see it are the people who are going to get left behind. And so I believe in this technology, and my family believes in it. My father wants America to be the crypto capital of the world, and I'm happy to support it today.
Big white pill to me to know that this is coming from inside the house. Colin Ross says, if Trump would have gotten the concrete wall that he wanted, I would have been the logistics manager for the project. Man, what a bummer. At the same time, I love the idea that our guys are potentially this closely adjacent to these sorts of projects. All right, so Mayor of Rockdale, Texas, wrote a letter explaining how Bitcoin mining revived my rural community. This is in the Austin American-Statesman opinion column. Bitcoin mining revived my rural community of Rockdale. The discovery of oil in East Texas more than a century ago sparked an energy boom that propelled our state into the modern age. Now we are on the cusp of a new economic renaissance, a digital energy boom, thanks to Bitcoin. And rural communities stand to benefit the most. My hometown of Rockdale is the perfect example. Rockdale was once a manufacturing hub, home to the Alcoa aluminum plant, which opened in 1952 and became one of the world's largest smelting facilities. It was the economic heart of our town, a major employer and critical to Texas manufacturing supply chain. The plant's success provided significant tax revenue and jobs for Rockdale. Then, in 2008, energy prices rose and new regulations forced the Alcoa plant to shut down. In our small town of 5,500, it felt like the rug was pulled out from under us. Hundreds of jobs vanished, and many families left in search of new opportunities. Rockdale lost millions in tax revenue, crippling our ability to fund schools, parks, and public works. It seemed like the town's best days were behind us. Or so we thought. Although the plant closed, it left behind a massive energy infrastructure, including substations and transmission lines. This made Rockdale the perfect location for Bitcoin mining, a business that needs ample, affordable power. At first, I wasn't sure about these miners. Were they here to stay? Was Bitcoin even real? Like many Texans today, I had my fair share of doubts. But after years of working closely with those in the industry, I saw the benefits firsthand. As both mayor and a lifelong resident of Rockdale, I learned that Bitcoin miners are deeply invested in the communities where they work. In Rockdale, these companies now employ hundreds of people. They've created mid-skilled jobs, allowing locals to find well-paying employment without leaving town. When Alcoa left Rockdale, the economy and tax base halved. But thanks to Bitcoin mining, we are today stronger than ever. Bitcoin mining companies have invested over $1 billion in Rockdale. They're among the largest taxpayers in Milam County and our local school district. Beyond tax revenue, these companies donate to local causes, including scholarships, police and fire departments, youth sports, and the Chamber of Commerce. They sponsor community events like the annual Christmas tree lighting. Are these the actions of people who don't care about rural Texas? No. Many employees are Rockdale natives invested in their hometown's future. I share Rockdale's story because I hear a different narrative at the state legislature. Some policymakers, though well-intentioned, misunderstand Bitcoin's positive impact. Some have suggested that Bitcoin miners create very few jobs, but my experience as mayor contradicts that. And Rockdale's experience is not unique. Bitcoin mining is one of the fastest-growing industries in Texas, employing over 22,000 people across the state. Communities like Corsicana will soon see the same economic benefits. Riot Platforms is building a state-of-the-art facility in Corsicana, which will be one of Navarro County's largest employers. The mine could bring $1.4 billion in taxable purchases and over $115 million in wages over the next decade. The same revitalization that gave Rockdale a second chance is now spreading to other rural communities. That's why Texas leaders should recognize the benefits of Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin is like a digital oil well poised to fuel the economic revival of rural Texas, if we allow it to grow. And this is from, his name is Ward Rodham. Ward Rodham is the mayor of Rockdale. He recently testified at the Texas Senate Business and Commerce hearing regarding Rockdale and Bitcoin mining. White pills abound, folks. You know what is a big white pill? In all of this H1B hullabaloo, J.D. Vance has made one statement. This is the statement he made on Christmas Eve. He said, making it affordable for a hardworking young person to afford a family is the core of America First. Too many have bought the lie that the path to prosperity is to flood the nation with cheap labor. In the next administration, we'll fight for American workers. He continues, Elon is borderline prophetic on collapsing family formation, though to be fair, others have also sounded the alarm. It's a complicated problem, but the main driver is the unaffordability of middle-class life. We will fight hard to fix this. We must. This here is the incoming vice president and the ostensible inheritor of the MAGA mantle, going beyond this next administration. He's also deeply intertwined with the tech world, was the chosen man for the tech guys. He was the one they wanted for vice president. I say this as framing for where your mind ought to be when considering this segment of the economy, the administration, the coalition. They're much closer to us than many would want you to think. Now, that doesn't mean that the tech world doesn't have people who fit the description that Bannon gives here. This is one of the best single statements that I heard from anyone on this entire issue. I'm going to play this whole thing, 7 minutes. Bannon absolutely cooks here.
It's very hard because this is central. It's not just central to the economics of what they do in Silicon Valley. The hate America crowd, and they hate America. The hate America crowd there. And when I say hate America, they hate the United States of America, the nation state of America, and American citizens. They believe in some sort of techno-feudal situation like was in Italy back, I don't know, in the 14th and 15th century. These kind of city-states. What they want is a network. They want a network where they're like a city-state, control the network. And there's a bunch of serfs that work for them. Not American citizens, but serfs, indentured servants. That's what they want, and they're not going to get that. We're going to win this fight. If you think that this audience in the MAGA movement, the hoplites, the Grundoons, the fixed bayonet crowd that fought the steal of 2020 and then had President Trump's back in the darkest days of 21 and were with him the entire time, particularly because he was right on the basic issues that were causing the destruction of our beloved republic, are going to now, after a massive come-from-behind victory, overwhelming victory, just sit there and roll over while the country's torn apart by oligarchs. It's not going to happen. And I always give full respect to Elon. Elon was absolutely central. Elon understood that this was about getting out low-propensity, low-information voters, and that the army of people from the Turning Points and from War Room and other groups, you guys that were, did the election integrity and then did all the door-to-door canvassing and get the vote, that you were essential. He did write the check, and that gets him a seat at the table. I've said that from the beginning, although I fundamentally disagree with him on major issues like the Chinese Communist Party, like transhumanism, and like the situation around immigration. But they're going to make this bold. Let me just restate something. As a fact, the H1B visa program is a total and complete scam from its top to the bottom. And Elon's put out this tweet that, all his companies have depended upon that. Now, we'll go dig out the information from public documents and just I'd like you to publish. We would like you to publish every engineer that you've brought in on HB1 visa and let us determine, let's just see the information and see if American citizens could not fill those billets. You're going to find we still haven't seen, if all this going on, have they come forward with any examples? One example, from David Sachs to Vivek Ramaswamy to Elon Musk, to any of them. Have they come up with examples of these Einsteins that the job could not be done by American citizen? American citizens come first. The problem this country in the last 40, 50 years is not just America hasn't come first, it's America last. It's American citizens last. And guess what? You provide the social structure. You provide the underpinnings. You are Burke's little platoons. As I say over and over again, in the Lions Club, in the Kiwanis Club, in the churches, in the Little Leagues, in the cops, and the teachers, and all of it, the PTAs, all of it. That's stability that is underneath American society. And that society is what we generate what we call the right stuff because it comes from grit, it comes from determination, it comes from some, you can't even put your finger on it, but if somebody's got it. Somebody call that jock culture. What Vivek's arguing for is a go-to valedictorian. No, bro, we've seen the world. We've seen the world. What happens when we go to valedictorian culture? We're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not having ruled by nerds. This is not at the end of the day about having all the greatest engineers. It's very important. Don't get me wrong. We're at the cutting edge of innovation. We still have more innovation in this country. Why do you think the Chinese Communist Party is over here stealing? The only reason they're even close to being competitive is our capital has financed it, and they've stolen our technology. They didn't develop that. They stole 95% of it, either from phony joint ventures or just from people working there. Why are these great companies not coming to India? Why are these great companies not coming? Because of the social stability and the innovation that comes as a blessing of liberty. Back through every patriot's grave to the revolution. That is the DNA of this country, this nation, a nation with borders, a nation with customs and tradition, a nation with flaws. We're not perfect. The motto that President Trump put out is make America great again. We hearken back to our greatest days. We hearken back to that spirit of innovation and just cussedness and toughness and grit. that got us through so much. Number one, that basically through the whole continent was able to build a nation and a civilization out of a vast wilderness. That's what this fight's about. And Elon's here with this latest thing last night, this latest quote where he says, the reason I'm in America, I'm quoting from this. I tell you what, we're going to wait. I'm going to end this segment from Tom Wolfe's book and Kaufman's movie, The Right Stuff. And I strongly recommend you watch that film between now and January 1st. An understated classic of the grit and determination and innovation of America at her finest. No, we're not going to lose this fight, folks. We've faced longer odds before. We are not going to lose this fight. This program's a scam. It's an economic and financial scam, but it's got a dark underpinning of a hatred, and I'm saying a hatred of American citizens and our beloved republic. You're going to have to climb over our dead bodies to defeat us. We will never, ever, ever give up. Ever. We'll return in a moment to the War Room.
Man, I love Bannon. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that America is an idea, and that idea is that the United States of America is a nation for Americans, above all. First and foremost, America is for Americans. It's a nation of Americans, and it's the best nation. Americans built it. Americans live here. Americans will continue to live here. This is our nation. It's the best nation. Everyone wants to come here because it's the best nation. And it is continually going to be our nation. That's the idea of America. A couple super chats here. Random username says, $5 here. He says, also mining facilities act like giant batteries for the power grid. It's the most cost-efficient way to improve power distribution. Yeah, yes, right. Because the miners will take all of the excess power that's available. They'll step in and they'll take it for really cheap. And then when which allows you to maintain a higher floor of energy production. And then they can scale back as needed when the grid is under extra strain. They can dial up and dial back as needed. There's so much waste and excess energy that's being produced all the time that we don't capitalize on. It's just getting burned off or fired into the ground. Or there's so many inefficiencies in our system, and that's one of the great things about Bitcoin, the technology, and not Bitcoin, the investment. These are separate things. I mean, they're not distinct things. They're obviously very tightly joined together, but Bitcoin, the technology, has this ability to seep into all of these cracks and make everything much more flexible and liquid. And then some leaf bucks from Slosher. He says materialists like Elon are very smart, but they don't even seem to understand what is special about the West and America. Nobody can be honest and say why they aren't building SpaceX in India. Well, and here is where I agree with the essence of this point, but I don't think that Elon doesn't understand that. That's been my whole point all along. I'm going to get into some more of this as we go. My whole point all along is that Elon absolutely does understand this very, very, very deeply. And I'm gonna rapid fire a bunch of things here now. So you guys got to get your brains nice and limber. Got to get your brains nice and limber and be ready to hold different thoughts simultaneously. So, first one here. I've got a great write-up from Raeg Nationalist. It says, the big H1B blow-up isn't as bad as it seems. In fact, it probably came at the best possible time. My latest detailed analysis for InfoWars. Let's give this a read. Honeymoon's over. Is this the beginning of the end for Musk and MAGA? The big blow-up between MAGA and Elon Musk isn't such a bad thing, actually. Looks like the honeymoon's over. Certainly, at this stage, after events of the last few days on Twitter, you could be forgiven for thinking the marriage between MAGA and the Muscovites has come to a flaming end, with both parties citing irreconcilable differences. And how fitting that the end should come at Christmas, the season of perpetual hope and blazing booze-fueled rows, while the gravy boils over and the kids cower behind the sofa. The big question now, who gets the dogs in the beach house in Malibu? But seriously, Trump isn't even in power yet, and the MAGA hats are calling the tech bros racist for wanting an immigration free-for-all and damn the American people. And the tech bros are calling the MAGA hats racist because they think a nation is something more than just an economic zone and some lines on a graph. And Americans shouldn't have to hustle like third world sewer divers and shoe polishers to stay alive in their own country. It's a real bloody mess. And like I say, Trump isn't even in power yet. In truth, though, there's a case to be made that this is all for the good. The big blow-up about H-1B visas and America's need to monopolize the world's top-tier talent, quote-unquote, has come at the right time and can be solved in a way that offers an honorable climb-down for both sides. Well, mostly the tech guys, actually. It was a clash that was destined to happen given the differences in background and assumptions on both sides. Big tech is hardly a natural ally of Trumpian populism, but it's better it happened now and not a few weeks or months down the line when it could become really nasty and a huge distraction from ensuring the second Trump administration starts as it means to go on. Thus far, President-elect Trump hasn't commented on the spat, and J.D. Vance has done little more than retweet a video of himself saying that American workers need to be protected. It's probably best it stays that way. So for now, let's call this a lover's tiff, that exhilarating first argument, rather than grounds for divorce. It could still become grounds if the matter isn't handled well, but that's far from inevitable, at least for now. First things first. The H-1B visa system is a scam. That's absolutely beyond doubt. Anyone who argues otherwise either doesn't know a thing about the system or is being disingenuous. There exists a massive apparatus, corporations, subcontractors, recruiting firms, ethnic mafia patronage networks straddling oceans and continents, that exists for the sole purpose of undercutting American workers by importing foreigners, mostly from Asia, to do their jobs for less via H-1B visas. It's about money. Of course it is. A 2020 report by the Economy Policy Institute laid out the problems with the system in great detail. It noted how 60% of H-1B positions certified by the U.S. Department of Labor were assigned wage levels far below the local median wage for the occupation. It also noted how, although over 50,000 firms rely on H-1B visas, just 30 firms accounted for 25% of all applications. These firms relied heavily on outsourcing companies that handled all the hiring and visa work themselves. The outsourcers exist for one purpose: to ensure a massive and constant flow of foreign workers into the U.S. The report also noted how major firms like Apple, Microsoft, Google, Walmart, and Facebook all use the H-1B system to replace American workers and pay their replacements lower wages. This year, a study published in the Journal of Business Ethics using leaked company data showed that top consultancy firm Deloitte pays its H-1Bs around 10% less than it pays its American counterparts. Big surprise. But it's not just top employers like Microsoft and Google and Deloitte that are using H-1Bs to maximize their profits. If you've been following the H-1B talk on Twitter over the last few days, you'll also know it's employers looking for mid-level accountants, gas station attendants, and even pickleball instructors and Chippendale strippers. Yes, all of those are true. The H-1B isn't a tool for ensuring America gets the cream of the crop from around the world, as its champions in the tech world want you to believe. It's a one-size-fits-all ticket to a smaller wage bill, whether you want a sports instructor, a JavaScript programmer, or a man to dance around in a thong to My Pony. Donald Trump and MAGA have consistently been against the abuse of the H-1B system from the very beginning. It's MAGA bread and butter, clearly. In 2020, Trump enacted a law reforming the H-1B system, but unsurprisingly, that was reversed by President Biden. Despite Trump's loose talk about stapling green cards to college diplomas, there's every indication the H-1B reforms will be revisited. During the election, the vast majority of the focus was on illegal immigration and mass deportations, but we shouldn't make the mistake of thinking the American people don't care about legal immigration as well. They do. New Rasmussen polling shows that 60% of Americans believe the country has enough domestic talent to fill white-collar jobs and doesn't need to import anymore. That includes 72% of Republicans surveyed and almost half of all Democrats. This is a broad, unifying issue. So what can we say about Elon Musk? First, we shouldn't exaggerate Musk's influence over Trump's immigration policy. Nobody should expect the two men to agree on everything or for the views of one necessarily to affect the other. Musk is running DOGE, not the DHS or Department of Labor. Second, and more importantly, there already exist ways for Musk, who says his concern is meritocracy, to ensure he gets the very best people in the world to work for his companies. The O-1 visa for persons of exceptional ability is just the ticket. The new Trump administration could end the H-1B system altogether. In fact, I think it should. And that wouldn't prevent Elon Musk from poaching the next Werner von Braun from the slums of Mumbai or Kolkata. Even if Trump doesn't do that, he can seriously reform the system without in any way betraying Musk. I will add here that we also can't underestimate Musk's influence over Trump's immigration policy, because an effectively operated DOGE will have an impact on DHS and DOL. If Doge is the auditing slashing mechanism for that, then how it winds up being implemented does dictate aspects of DHS and DOL. It's clear from watching Elon's triangulations over the last couple of days that he's prepared to modify his position when push comes to shove. Here's where I'll disagree. I don't think that he's ever modified his position. And I'm going to die on this hill. He has never modified his position. There's more going on here than simply Elon is an H1B maximalist, and then everyone yelled at him, and then he pulled back and decided, okay, actually, I guess maybe I'll moderate on this. That's absurd. This is childlike thinking. I'm not attributing it to Rog nationalists necessarily. This is also a very popular position right now, and I recognize that I am alone on this hill, it seems. But I don't think that he's ever modified his position. I think a bunch of people, I think he, whether attributed to autism or something else, he was intentionally opaque about this. I shouldn't say intentionally. He was opaque about this from the beginning. But after listening to every single thing he said and all of the people in his orbit for the last year, I have been shouting this from the rooftops for as long as I can remember, that this particular segment of Silicon Valley that has upswelled and come out as Trump supporters do not align with these premises that have dominated Silicon Valley politically for the last decade or two, however long you want to, mostly a decade. They're different. There's something different. They have different values. So assuming that the starting point here is that Elon wants the H1B system with all of its abuses and he wants infinity Pajits and all this stuff, if that was your presumption to begin with, then I can understand why you would think, oh, when he said these other things, he's walking back his previous position. But he's not. That previous position was one that he's never held. It would be a crying shame to alienate the world's richest man who has already done a tremendous amount to ensure America at least has the chance to be great again. Musk contributed hundreds of millions of dollars to the Trump campaign, not to mention spending $44 billion on buying Twitter, which may very well have been the decisive political intervention of the last 4 years. Musk has promised to be the right to George Soros, and the right needs a George Soros. The H1B debate itself is a testament to the power of the new digital public square and a sign that things are working more or less as they should be. There's a lot of angry, reckless language, including from Elon Musk himself, but that doesn't change the fact that ordinary people are speaking truth to power, and power is taking notice. So give Americans what they want. Give them a real meritocracy. Let them actually compete on a level playing field in their own country. They'll be just fine. The very best will still want to come, and if they're good enough, they still can. I'll say I disagree with this here. Americans should not have to compete on a level playing field in their own country. It is their country. We are not here to compete with the entire world. I think when people express this, I think they express this in good faith. They have the 90s liberal, race-blind, ethnic-blind view of the world, and they genuinely don't want artificial hurdles being constructed in the way of heritage Americans. And to the extent that they believe that, when we're talking about governing political coalitions, these are very valuable allies to have. Because the predominant, most important first step here is getting rid of the institutional hurdles. Because if we do have a level playing field in our own country, then because we are Americans and this is our country, we will win. But that doesn't mean that the default state of things should be a level playing field in our own country. We need to progress a step at a time here and keep our ultimate vision in mind. There should not be a level playing field. It should be more difficult for non-Americans to compete with Americans. It should be distorted against them. That's the entire premise of having a country in the first place. And then here's another very good one from Lomez. He says, new post, it's about the H1B debate, of course. We learned a lot of important lessons about this new coalition and how policy disagreements might be hashed out in the future. I try to summarize a few of them here. Now, I've been skeptical of Lomez at various times in the past, and I still am fairly skeptical of him in general. But I think every single thing that he writes here is bang on, essentially. Let's read it. H1Bs, who has a voice? What does the tech right want? What does MAGA want? And why arguing about it is good, actually. The dust is beginning to settle on the great Christmas H1B debate of 2024. It's been quite a ride. Much has been revealed. The coda to this episode won't come for months, maybe a year, or even more once the policy is actually decided, and even then DC will do its thing to obstruct and push back, and there'll be another round of horse trading before anything gets implemented. No matter how much you think you've won, and you have won, the reality of the bigger problem of American government will have its say too. Clear pills only. No matter that final outcome, now is a good time to do a post-mortem on this episode since it feels unique in many ways and is likely to be replayed over and over again in the coming years. There are some important lessons to be taken from the last several days. The arguments and the meta-arguments and the manner in which the arguments happened. So taking a snapshot of it all while it is still fresh may be useful down the road. 1. You matter. First, dear humble poster, you are in the arena. There is a shop-worn notion, mostly leveled by a kind of teenage goth above-it-all style thinker hiding his own insecurities and his edgy performative indifference, that says whatever's happening on X is only fun and games, politically irrelevant, that you're shouting into the void. Don't ask him what exactly he's shouting into by pointing this out. In any case, if you still believe that, there is no hope for you. These lesser posters, those who fail the test of the election or feel embittered about their own modest audience relative to larger accounts, will insist that anons are wasting their time with this stuff. Don't believe them. You can take my word for it. And he's got I can't remember what this is called. Footnote. The footnote is, I know things. You can take my word for it. I know things. The things you are saying are being read and considered by the people who matter. X discourse is not just trivial recreation. These ideas trickle up. The tweets themselves trickle up. They land in the laps of the people in Palm Beach and DC. You are being heard. Your objections are being noted. Your good arguments improve the chances of the things you want to see happen actually happening. Your bad arguments hurt those chances. Policy is getting hashed out in real time, and you have a say in it. And in large part, Elon Musk is to thank for this. None of this is possible without Musk buying Twitter and reforming it into the platform he promised to make it. The vehicle for free speech and debate, for free speech and real debate, the digital public square. Whatever your differences with the man, don't lose sight of that. He is owed a tremendous amount of deference and respect. Elon, thank you. This is what we've been talking about here for a long time. That we are the ones driving these narratives now. And this is part of the reason why I've taken the stance I have on this, broadly speaking, which is that we cannot be reactive in this. We can't get into the reactive, hyper-emotionalizing, acting like we're a small fringe minority that doesn't have any influence, and so we have to get extra vitriolic to try to attain our ends. Now, we have to balance that thought with the recognition that we are also the vanguard and the radical fringe, and that in being the vanguard and the radical fringe, we have to recognize that it's going to take time for people to come along, but we have to recognize the signposts along that way. So what this all means together is we have to have a really clear view of who we are, where we are, and what the state of play is in the world right now. 2, everything old is new again. In a previous post about the neocons, I urged readers to be mindful of the similarities between the class of disaffected liberals who had joined the right to form the Reagan coalition after getting mugged by reality, and the disaffected liberals of today who very recently found a home in MAGA after getting mugged by woke. In both cases, the newcomer coalition member brought some amount of sophistication and prestige to the right wing, because that helped boost to the right wing cause that helped boost them over the edge with median voters who otherwise might have fallen under the spell of the media's one-way villainization of right-wing politicians and beliefs. In the case of the tech right, a loose collection of Silicon Valley so-and-sos, and who by no means are ideologically uniform, they have also brought to the MAGA coalition a lot of money and technological firepower. The open question has always been, what do they want in return? Obviously, they want an end to woke. They want to loosen the left's stranglehold on the culture. They want clean and safe streets. They want institutions that work. They want low taxes and minimal regulations and a legal system that doesn't distort and gum up the gears of the market. This is all to be expected and rather boring and unobjectionable stuff. But there's a deeper impulse animating their interests that the right needs to pay attention to in order to effectively negotiate with this new coalition partner. And I want to emphasize that this is necessary, effectively negotiating with this new coalition partner. They need to be treated, and I believe that they have done more than enough to this point to merit being treated as a coalition member. So these sorts of spats need to be approached as negotiation between allies and not flame wars between rivals, because it's in both of our interests to maintain this coalition because of the broad base of agreement that we have on things like end to woke, loosening the left stranglehold on the culture, clean and safe streets, institutions that work, low taxes and minimal regulations, and a legal system that doesn't distort and gum up the gears of the market. Mark Andreessen, a key figure in the tech right, has spent a lot of time doing the rounds on podcasts lately, more or less telling us exactly what they want. The reason Andreessen gives for why he, and presumably other Silicon Valley figures, broke from the Democrats is because the Democrats broke from what Andreessen calls the deal. Here he is on Rogan explaining the deal, edited lightly for clarity. Quoting, "So there used to be this thing I call the deal with a capital D. And the deal was you could be, and this is what I was, you could be a tech founder, you could start a private company, you could create a tech product. Everybody loved you, it was great glowing press coverage, the whole thing. You take the company public, it employs a lot of people, creates a lot of jobs, you make a lot of money. At some point you cash out and then you donate all the money to charity and everybody thinks you're a hero, right? And it's just great, right? And this is how it ran for a very long time. And this was the deal. This was Clinton and Gore with 100% in support of that, and they were 100% pro-capitalism in this way and 100% pro-tech. And they actually did a lot to foster this kind of environment. And basically what happened is the last 15 years or so, Democrats culminating in this administration basically broke every part of that deal for people in my world." End quote. More on what he said about the deal on a podcast with Barry Weiss. Quote, "So basically every single thing I just said about the deal is, for the last decade has been now held to be presumptively evil. The whole idea that there are certain people who merit a greater economic outcome than others is itself evil. Technology, of course, is held to be presumptively evil. Tech companies are held to be presumptively evil. Tech people are held to be this evil class. Anybody who's rich is evil. And then the thing that really shook me was when I realized that philanthropy was being redefined as evil." End quote. Now, tech people being held to be this evil class. Yes, a large reason for that is because many tech people actually behaved as if they were part of an evil class. And so in differentiating themselves from this world, the tech right guys have to recognize, and I think they do recognize, that they do need to disambiguate themselves from the Sam Altmans of the world. So yes, politically, this is back to Lomez. So yes, politically, these guys are Clinton-era neoliberals. Talking them out of this ideological position is a worthwhile endeavor, since many probably never gave much thought to their politics prior to the last few years, and might discover over time why their default neoliberalism is ultimately anathema to the kind of society they actually want to live in. And I'll agree partially with this. These guys are Clinton-era neoliberals, but they're like passing through the stage of Clinton-era neoliberals in a certain sense. The rumors that I've heard of the types of conversations that are being had in these group chats would shock you guys. There is ample appetite among the so-called tech right, what would you say, like anti-woke business leaders. They are playing footsie with some extremely radical political notions because ultimately they're not really political creatures. They've been focused on tech. They play in their sandbox. They want to build shit. They're the grillionaires. They just want to shoot skyscrapers into the sky. So they haven't had to think about politics for most of their lives. They're a bunch of ambitious nerds. But politics has become more and more an imposition upon them. So now they're being forced to think about politics. And so their starting point is going to be Clinton-era neoliberals because that's like the default waters that they came up in. But they're also not rigidly ideological about it. Have patience. Keep pressing, but have patience. That is a long-term project, and you have to meet people where they are, not where you think they ought to be. This is fine. There's a lot to be salvaged from the 90s. We can work with that. Capitalism is good. Making money is good. Making cool gadgets is good. Going to Mars is good. And anyway, the crux of the matter is not really about ideology. It's about status. It's about respect. What Andreessen reveals with commendable honesty is that these guys simply don't want to be regarded as evil. They want to live in a culture where the rewards for their achievements in technology and business are denominated both in dollars and in reverence. The alternative, and they know this, is Luigi Mangione. It is leftist bloodlust. It is the shrill demonization from people like AOC and Elizabeth Warren. It is more and louder and more credible calls to eat the rich. MAGA can and should agree to the deal the tech right had previously brokered with the Democrats. Elon Musk, Andreessen, Thiel et al. Are in fact great men with great accomplishments to their name. It costs us nothing to recognize that fact and demonstrate reverence and confer status on these men where it is earned. We are decidedly not the coalition of petty resentments. We honor achievement, and we both respect and expect the noblesse oblige that comes with it. This one is easy. If you want patronage networks, then you cannot spit upon your prospective patrons. And while there may be some disagreements around the margins, just how many highly skilled engineers do we need to import, and what do we mean by highly skilled anyway, it is also easy to deliver on giving them back their sandbox to play around in, where they can have their tech and their money and be unburdened by overzealous regulators. De-wokeifying Silicon Valley is good for us, and it's good for them. 3. What does MAGA want? Perhaps the most important outcome of this whole episode was the MAGA contingent getting the opportunity to loudly signal to its new partner what it wants out of this deal. Because so many of the tech right came into this coalition by passing through the crucible of woke, they were, and I'll be charitable here, simply naive about the salience of immigration for their new partners, and naive too about the contours of this issue as a policy matter. As I mentioned on my appearance on Charlie Kirk's show on Friday, immigration is the linchpin of the Trump movement, and has been since he came down the escalator to announce his presidential campaign in 2015. Immigration has been top of mind for the Trump right for decades, long before Trump himself was a candidate. Why is immigration so important? As Steve Saylor said in his review of Otis L. Graham's 2008 book, Immigration Reform and America's Unchosen Future, quote, immigration is probably the single, broadest, deepest, most intellectually challenging topic in all of public policy. There's no knottier or more significant question you can ask then, and knottier here, for those who are listening, is Knottier, as in like it's a knot, a thorny knot. There's no knottier or more significant question you can ask then, when the government elects a new people, how many and whom should it elect? End quote. It is the question on which all other political questions rest. If it is true that the government exists to serve the interests of its people, then all political matters start with defining its people. What has distinguished Trump from the post-Cold War politicians and movements that have preceded him and have contested his rise to power over the last 10 years is that Trump has centered the interests of the American people over those of the rest of the world. What Trumpism promises is that American policy will redound to the benefit of Americans. A radical belief, I know. This means American foreign policy, trade policy, and yes, labor policy. Why the H1B debate cut to the quick for many of us on the MAGA right is because the H1B proponents misunderstood this basic premise. In short, and without getting into the wonky economics of it, the H1B program taken in aggregate creates a form of labor arbitrage that favors the mobility of capital and foreign workers over the well-being of the national workforce. This is a fundamental violation of the social contract and a betrayal of the reciprocal promise of work for fair wages that undergirds any functional market. Beyond that, the hidden social costs make this an even worse deal for the average American. Social cohesion is a real thing. Social trust is a real thing. We are not merely transactional borderless agents moving around like widgets to be plugged in and out of the global GDP machine on a whim. It should be telling that the kind of people who most stridently insist that we regard ourselves in this way tend to exhibit severe psychological damage. For the rest of us, it is quite apparent, and the data back this up, that large amounts of immigration create negative outcomes for a lot of the things that we care most about. The English immigration restrictionist, polemicist, fiery orator, and villain to all right-thinking people, Enoch Powell, had a slogan he would frequently inject into his speeches on the subject. Numbers are of the essence. If you want the numbers on H1Bs, then here are the numbers. It's not pretty. But truthfully, we shouldn't get into all of that. Suffice to say that we want, and he links to, here are the numbers, and it's to a thread from Robert Sterling that we're going to cover here in just a little bit. As a reminder, again, the link to this article, if you want to go and check all the different things he's linked to, the link to this article will be in the description, kingpill.substack.com, and also all the podcatchers. But truthfully, we needn't get into all of that. Suffice to say that we want, what I want anyway, is to preserve America and its bounty for, firstly, Americans, its unique heritage, its wealth, its traditions, its culture, and the opportunities it creates. Finally, this needn't come at a cost to our new Silicon Valley partners. The American workforce is quite capable. As Cremu has demonstrated, PISA scores for Americans, once you control for race, dominate the rest of the world. Here's a chart, link to the tweet. Removing DEI, discriminatory hiring practices, reforming talent development pipelines, particularly higher ed, so that they don't actively suppress our native talent, especially white men, will solve most of these problems. The idea that Americans lack technical ability or that our culture is somehow deficient is insulting, but more importantly, it is simply wrong. And I'll add in all of this that for my own framework in thinking about these different factors and stuff in this coalition, I've placed Lomez more on the tech right than the Trumpian populist right. He obviously doesn't feel that way. But as I'm looking at this, his position that he's describing here is representative of the position of these Silicon Valley MAGA guys that I've spent the last year talking about. Number 4, debate is good, actually. I've seen many tepid suggestions that this dust-up was an unfortunate episode that exposed the cracks in the MAGA coalition, gave fodder to Democrats to use against Trump, or even that it was the nefarious doings of Russian bots and bad actors. None of this is true at all, and it amounts to little more than defensive posturing for people who are uncomfortable articulating their beliefs, mostly because they've never had to articulate them before, and don't want to see those beliefs tested against counter-arguments. But all of this is in fact healthy and good. Mill provided many defenses of free speech and on liberty, but perhaps the most compelling defense is that it is only by hearing what our opposition says that we can remember and know what we believe of ourselves. Now, I read through this quote because I'm deeply suspicious of anyone providing John Stuart Mill quotes, but this quote is actually very good. Quote, "He who knows only his own side of the case knows little of that. His reasons may be good, and no one may have been able to refute them. But if he is equally unable to refute the reasons on the opposite side, if he does not so much as know what they are, he has no ground for preferring either opinion. The rational position for him would be suspension of judgment, and unless he contents himself with that, he is either led by authority or adopts, like the generality of the world, the side to which he feels most inclination. Nor is it enough that he should hear the arguments of adversaries from his own teachers, presented as they state them and accompanied by what they offer as refutations. That is not the way to do justice to the arguments or bring them into real contact with his own mind. He must be able to hear them from persons who actually believe them, who defend them in earnest and do their very utmost for them." End quote. The summary of all of this is steel man, as distinct from straw man. Back to Lomez. What I saw over the last several days, for maybe the first time in my life, was a robust political debate in which anybody with internet access and something worthwhile to say could participate with real-world implications, including the participation of policymakers and decision-makers at the highest levels of power, not in the spirit of consensus-making, but in the spirit of testing the value of one set of ideas and preferences versus another. And none of it was mediated by news anchors, professional journalists, or representatives of epistemic officialdom. Perhaps most notably of all, the cathedral did not participate in any way. The cathedral being a reference to the Yarvin term. They had no say in this debate. They did not contribute nor referee. Their rules did not obtain. They cannot boost the voices they prefer nor eject from the stage the voices they find distasteful. This is a tremendous thing that is perhaps more significant than any outcome as it relates to the agreement that is struck over, quote, high-skilled workers. A politics that is not constrained and distorted by the media filter, where the regime apparatchiks self-deport to blue sky and blissful irrelevance, is a real opportunity for ideas that have previously been cast outside the Overton window to finally have their due. They may not win out, who knows? But they can finally be heard and tested against alternatives. This is a good thing, a hopeful thing. It is also good what this kind of debate exposes about certain people and their beliefs and emotional stability. I do not think it is necessary to call anyone out specifically who might have said something foolish or regrettable. Suffice to say, it happened. They will pay reputational costs, and it is prudent to keep a long memory for these things. It is also prudent to recognize an ally who has demonstrated goodwill in the past and can be a valuable asset in the future. When the dust settles, give them an out. Give them a way back in. If they're petulant and refuse to take the off-ramp that is presented to them, so be it. But there is a long road ahead. There's a lot to be gained by preserving this coalition. Hurt feelings belong to the longhouse, the old way of doing things. This is the good timeline, and as my favorite 4'8" Filipina tech worker likes to say, Donald Trump is going to force you to live with dignity whether you like it or not. And this is a little jab at the Mystery Grove account. Okay, let's continue with this here. Close out a couple of these tabs because I'm going to link to the tweets that link to them. So now I've got some interesting takes from perhaps unsuspecting sources. First of all, though, as my wife reminds me, thank you for reminding me. My little sister, who's been living with us for a few months now, is extremely creative, very thoughtful gift giver. And these are a couple of the things she gave Amy and I for Christmas. She handmade these for Amy, a possum. It's got a wire skeleton in it so you can twist it, move it around. Amy loves possums. She's just obsessed with possums, thinks they're the cutest animal in the world, absolutely loves them. And Ani made me, let's see where I can put it where you guys can see it, an otter. I am equally obsessed with otters. I think they're absolutely hilarious, adorable, incorrigible little assholes. And one of my favorite pastimes is sitting and watching otters spurg out and like spaz. So one thing that she is, she's very good at making these sorts of she's made little stickers. She's made lots of little things like this. So if this is something, we're trying to encourage her to get into flexing her commercializing of her art. So I want to give you guys a shout out I want to give her a shout out to you guys about these adorable little things that she made, because in the future, when she starts making stuff, I'm going to be hawking her wares for her here. Adorable little possum and otter. Vorpal Anvil says, possums are cool until you go outside at 5 a.m. to feed your dog and find one in the dog food bag hissing at you. He's hungry, man. Just give him a little bit. He'll take off. Yeah, lover of possums, unique among the female species, says Ryan Isaac. Yeah, not many women do, but she knows a lot about possums too. She's done a lot of studying. Water puppies, yes. All right, let's continue here. Do me a favor and hit the like button. We got 121 watching right now and only 54 likes. Appreciate all of the generosity with the super chats as well. So this is from some account. I've never seen him before, but this one went viral and I noticed it. As African-born, Indian married gay guy, qualified PhD in aerodynamics and living in the West, some observations. Neoliberalism equals massive Western deindustrialization, fake money plus culture plus progress. Massive legal and illegal migration inflates GDP figures and provides slave labor for metro elites. Foreign wars needed to export printed money to show growth. It is thankfully dying, but not without the establishment kicking and screaming for World War III, so that mainly Europe can default on sovereign debt and claim capitalism doesn't work, and we need direct monetary theory, communism via central bank. Worsening conditions at home such that mostly native men have no choice but to join forces so as to put food on the table for family, if not brainwashed by MSM about Russia, Iran, China, etc. Feminism morphs into its final phase where women are told to hate the very things that define womanhood. Elite view the population with contempt, as cattle that need to be controlled via the technocratic state. Nationalism is needed to stabilize culture and tradition of nation states, let alone the economy. You are constantly called a fascist, racist, bigot, etc. for noticing the failure of neoliberalism. Doesn't matter if you're a white British person lamenting that anti-white racism is normalized and that you can be jailed for calling it out, or an Indian Hindu recognizing that the colonial state never left and all narratives are developed to attack dharmic life. People are tired of dehumanizing nature of the globalized world and crave freedom via rebuilding something authentic, like cottage community plus industry, agriculture, entrepreneurship, etc. Neo-lib agenda causes massive brain drain in developing nations, and genuine skilled migrants from third world living in the West agree with very strict merit-based immigration system. However, as aforementioned, Western governments simply won't allow such limitation, as economy would have a big correction. They would call it a crash. Most skilled migrants in the West terribly miss their home country, but many understand current levels of migration are simply unsustainable. Many can't say anything at risk of being ostracized. Frustrations of local native populations is expressed via spicy online takes and memes. Efforts to finger wag and get upset of these just makes them even funnier and more potent. Illegal migrants need to be deported. Abuse of migration system curbed by firing activist government employees and judges. There is a insatiable thirst for some semblance of sovereignty to return, for common sense to prevail, and the ability to laugh at stereotypes of ourselves and others. For the human spirit to be reignited via philosophy, art, actual science, and not scientism via religion, etc. The ray of hope is that the left are dying. The era of cheap money is over, and the right has more people with skills and emotional plus spiritual strength. MSM and every infected institution have already lost, and their death is just playing out now. But there is a fake right wing with the likes of Daily Wire, Tories in the UK, and rhinos in the US that are dying a slow death too. The world, rightly or wrongly, is breaking up into regional powers. Believe it or not, even the US Federal Reserve and its shareholders have had enough of ESG and DEI. There is a time lag, but I believe we will see the shift of finance plus culture plus media plus ... And most of all, the death of critical theory, whether it's applied to race, sex, etc. The human spirit is yours. Tap into it. Nourish it with genuine experience. Speak truthfully. So this, again, is coming from an African-born, Indian, married gay guy. When I say that this Silicon Valley MAGA world is much further along on these issues than many people appreciate, this is the type of person I'm talking about. Now, yes, this is very well stated. He still's got to go back. But I'll make a generous offer to him. In return for his excellent propaganda, we will offer him 1 year in the country. We're very generous as Americans. Here's another one. This is from Ask Yatharth. Here's a thread here, and he does this sort of thing that a lot of these guys do, where they do these threads kind of just meandering through some of these ideas and link to a bunch of other threads. So I'm going to encourage you guys to go through and listen to read some of these other ones that he links through. It's interesting. This is a very, very strange little subculture. It's actually fairly large, but this strange little subculture on the internet of, I don't even know what to call these people, but there's a lot of overlap with the Trump-friendly Silicon Valley world. He says, allow me to be a class traitor for 1 second. Maybe it's important that benevolent, slightly crazy, rich tech people exist. He says, because a lot of them aren't like the Koch brothers. They don't continue to invest their billions in influencing politics, nor like SBF, who's the son of the Democrats' political machine. Plus, crypto isn't really conventional tech. It's its own politics, scam-invested shithole. I believe in my heart of hearts, a person like Elon isn't motivated by money. He may have a fragile ego and hate platforms of speech he doesn't control, and maybe he shouldn't have billions, but he and most tech multimillionaires I know were just ambitious nerds. The FDA wasn't doing what Nat Friedman did with just $500,000. No one is doing what Brian Johnson was. As repugnant as I found his project at first vibes, this kind of stuff matters. And he's referring to Brian Johnson. He says, and Johnny Miller, he says, was a hater, but honestly came to respect him. We need people who commit to their bits earnestly and seriously, and however misguided or cringe to others. That's me, and that's him, and that's a lot of us. Assembling a team to execute projects with intense focus and sufficient capital that creates a public surplus of knowledge. Hollywood spends $200 million animating The Flash. Whatever, that stuff doesn't matter. No one was trying to make us multiplanetary as hard or competently as Elon Musk. As much as I found that project repugnant on vibes too, I have to concede. No one else was holding the vision and executing on it too focusedly, and it might end up mattering. To quote this guy here, who's another one of these similar posters, Visakhan Virasamy, he said, there's a dearth of serious players in the world that are paying attention to the world and executing on projects over time with multi-step goals. We have become accustomed as citizens in great democracies that lived through a golden economic age to trust our governments to do so, to think there's an invisible hand in the machine, the academic machines and political machines making it all right. And maybe there once was, but machines atrophy and they continue to be useful and load-bearing and yet no longer enough. It's liberalism coded to not question the institutions and to forget the agency of individual players, when throughout history, individual players very much were a real force of change. This phase of liberalism was important to pass through because it was true. When you create a functioning democracy in markets and science, individuals stop mattering as much. The machines do something wonderful. Fewer leviathans. I don't care to return to contextless great man theory of history, but do care about taking what we learned from the current reaction and using that to build an ever more accurate picture of reality. And he quotes this. It says, thesis, great man, antithesis, tides of history, synthesis, great man surfing the tides of history. It's very obvious to me. I can see all of the areas where I diverge from this guy, but I appreciate this perspective, that having these single-minded, what did he call it here? These ambitious nerds who are just single-mindedly committing to their bits and diving into exploration of the world. And to a certain extent, we need these sorts of people to have their sandbox to play in, to go just do like insane things. Stretch the limits of the possible. So yeah, there's a lot of other interesting threads. Let me touch on this other one he has here. He says, my opinion on space and going to Mars changed instantly when I heard a friend bitch about, why do we have to go to space anyway? And I began talking about, dude, no, let me tell you. And I began re-enchanting what it meant to go to a different world. I started telling the story of what it meant to look at a star and wonder, and the insatiable human appetite to explore, and the page after page of the book of human history we haven't even begun to turn. And in that moment, something broke. Because up until that point, I'd kind of mindlessly gone along with the liberal talking points around, we don't need to go to space, Elon is bad, we need to save the human environment. I couldn't believe that a room full of people who are otherwise some of the most curious adults, attuned to myth and somatics and indigenous culture, could somehow have been pilled against space. Because it's the most ancient, virile, alive human impulse to go beyond and discover. I couldn't believe my body worker friend was against going to space. It was so ridiculous in that moment, I recognized the absurdity in her as the absurdity in me, and something just snapped. I found myself talking to her, and really, I think me, back into an enchanted world. Please forgive me for quoting this video because I understand it's incredibly dangerous and don't advocate it, and highways for families to get home and stuff. There's a guy zooming along on a motorcycle on the road. But it re-enchanted something incredibly basic for me. Speed is good. Speed is fun. Thrill is good. Thrill is fun. Humanity owes its resilience to dumb fucks who tried to make shit work and felt deeply alive and sang songs and tinkered with new inventions. Going to space is about connecting with the oldest ancestral impulse life has ever had since RNA, which is to go explore, go poke at that corner of the universe, make shit work that lets us get there. Gini's coefficient, inequality, etc. is still real, but to have that completely eclipse your sense of this aliveness is to reduce the humanity you are fighting for to pulp. You have to be alive while fighting for the good. You have to keep the torch of all that is good alive. Next one. This is funny to see come across my timeline because I've been following Nabil Aziz for quite a long time. He's been a dropkick copy, get copy skills. He used to do a lot of really good copywriting threads. He's very much in that entrepreneurship, like Alex Hormozy kind of world. But I saw this because Elon replied to this tweet yesterday. Nabil says, I will lose my brown card for saying this. 1. Only American whites believe in individualism, meritocracy, fair play, colorblindness, etc. Everywhere else in the world, including the white places, your station in life is based on where you're born, who your parents are, who you know, where you went to school, etc. England, for example, is terribly classist. 2. Brown, black, and yellow people want revenge on whites for beating us during colonialism. And we don't care how we get it. Immigration, jobs, government benefits, etc. 3. Browns, blacks, and yellows born in America never got over whatever racism they faced growing up. Being called towel heads, sand, N-word, apu, etc. Once they have any power over white Americans, they will use it to harm them. 4, browns, blacks, and yellows are the most racist peoples in all of the world, and most of all towards other, slightly different browns, blacks, and yellows. Generalizations aren't universalizations, etc., but by and large, what I have said is true. If I remember right, he's from, I want to say he's from like Dubai or UAE or something like that, and I'm pretty sure, I don't think he lives in the U.S., but he spent time in the U.S. And I saw this, and this tweet went mega viral because Elon did his little double exclamation point reply to it. Read into that what you will. We continue. Listener to the show, Michael Cronin, replied to my Saturday Astrolabe with a good little mini thread here that I wanted to highlight. He said, my take on this is much of the American right unconsciously was trying to summon the spirit of the prodigal son. They wanted Silicon Valley tech to take on the sins of not only the rest of their industry, but also the sins of U.S. industry writ large. Taking on the sins of the past is hard. No one wants to do this, especially a bunch of 90s liberals and libertarians. The leader that can take on all of these sins, repent for them, will be the great man of the age. He would be the model for everyone to follow. Someone will have to be the vessel of the prodigal son. If Silicon Valley tech will not be it, will Trump? Will Vance? I do not know. If no one will be the vessel, then we are guaranteed to get the vengeful son. And what I'll add to this is that you may not like hearing this, but the answer here, who will be the vessel of the prodigal son? We will. We must. This is a variant of the build a Caesar notion. If you want your Caesar, one of the best ways to get that Caesar is to get a whole bunch of little micro Caesars. And if you object to the Caesar notion, like take the essence of the point here. If we want the spirit of the prodigal son manifest, we have to manifest it ourselves. Which means we have to return to the Father, repent, and redeem our fathers. We can't just demand that other people redeem these issues for us, take on all of the sins themselves. It doesn't work that way. You have to start with yourself doing it and model that for other people. You have to take the sins on yourself. This is my fault. It's my fault that this H1B system has been so egregiously abused. It's my fault that Americans are languishing physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. It's my fault that we're being ostracized within our own countries. It's my fault that all of these different negative elements that I identify, foreign countries coming in and buying up our land, distorting our political process, buying off our judges and our district attorneys. It's my fault. It starts with me. I'm the one who, through my own inactivity and inefficiency and selfishness and narrow-mindedness and high time preference, has contributed to this entire corrupt system. And it has to start with each person embracing their own responsibility for it, rather than spending their time trying to figure out who else is responsible. Because if every single person all just embraced their own responsibility for it and aligned their priorities properly, it would be fixed. This is like plainly, obviously true. But everyone says, "Oh no, well, I'm right now. I figured it all out, but nobody else has. Nobody else, they're all wrong, so they all have to change." If you're occupying that posture, you're demonstrating that you have not returned, repented, redeemed. And it's not something you do once. This isn't dunk you in the water and you come out and go on with your life. No, that's the beginning. You have to return, repent, and redeem. And then return, repent, and redeem. And then return, repent, and redeem. And then return, repent, and redeem. And if we all begin modeling this, more people will model it. And the people above us, they will begin modeling it as well. And as they begin modeling it, more people below them will model it. Thank you to Michael Cronin for these thoughts. This is really good, and I think it was exactly right. A lot of the anger and the vitriol is like it's justified to be angry and vitriolic about these things. It's good to express that, but you have to maintain your focus. Low time preference, long time horizons. And again, recognizing that you have to change before you can demand that other people change. Just Loki here said, would be exceptionally funny if decades of discriminatory hiring and recruiting practices that filtered out perfectly qualified candidates due to ethnic nepotism caused techies to underestimate how smart whites can be. Until the richest man in the world is playing defense against random dudes on Twitter. The thing with outside recruitment and staffing agencies is that the main company at least has to pretend like they have no idea what's going on, or may genuinely not know. Executives might very well be kept in the dark just so they don't have to lie under oath. But the problem with a misaligned filter is that unless you have some kind of audit structure, you'll have no idea what you are not seeing. And I said, this is exactly what's happened. Mass rhetorical opposition to DEI and ESG is only a few months old. Think back to 6 months ago, a year ago. Opposition to DEI and ESG, vocal public opposition to it, was almost non-existent. Now, there was a whole bunch of preference falsification happening here, as the recent preference falsification cascade has shown us. That there was a lot of people who were toiling under this, hating every single second of it, but waiting for that click, that turning point, where suddenly it became fashionable to publicly criticize it. And you know who started that? Elon Musk. He was the turning point in this cascade, this preference falsification cascade. Very few people truly appreciate how pervasive and destructive it's been. After the last few days, that subject has been blown wide open. Massive white pill. And, lending credence to this, Josh Steinman says, talking about Cernovich, describing this discrimination against qualified Trump supporters, he said, this has been a huge issue. I spent a lot of December 2020 and January 2021 putting on workshops for junior political appointees in the Trump admin, doing resume reviews, mock interviews, and then opening up my modest Rolodex to try and get people interviews in tech. Very few people, both before 1/6 and after, were interested in even talking to folks. There was a single organizational exception that I will not name out of discretion and respect. In the end, 80% of those I tried to place did not have jobs as far as I know. Many have since found solid employment, but it was not easy, nor do I believe that they found positions that maximally utilize their skills at an appropriate level of responsibility or compensation. Sure, call me biased, but these young staffers are my friends. I wanted the best for them and found it tough to deliver. Some of you may say things like, oh, well, maybe they weren't qualified or some version of skill mismatch. That was not it at all. Rather, the message I received when I made my inquiries was a polite eye roll. We aren't hiring Trump people. And it was not as though, as we see today, those in question had some word or deed done damage to those companies. Just the opposite. The Trump administration had been a boon to them, with surging stock prices and valuations, new opportunities, regulatory certainty, etc. Many of these young staffers simply loved these companies, their missions, and thought they could help. The doors were unceremoniously slammed in their faces. And David Sachs signal boosted this and said, I wasn't aware of this before, but it makes sense. Big tech was censoring and deplatforming Trump supporters, so it makes sense they would blackball Trump staffers from jobs too. Really not okay at all. I can understand the anger. Cernovich says, right, when MAGA hears labor shortage, that sets off a lot of alarms. How can companies like Apple, Facebook, and Google discriminate against Trump voters and then cry for H1Bs? This is a huge issue, the political discrimination within big tech and even startups. And Josh Steinman said, thank you, David. I appreciate you drawing attention to this issue here. And again, this was the David Sachs who, at the very beginning of all of this, said his take on the immigration thing was he fully trusts Stephen Miller to handle it, which should have been a very strong signal at the very beginning, but everybody ignored it because, justifiably, they were really pissed off, and this is a raw nerve. And it's easy to have this low resolution view of the world, which is, oh, big tech is this gigantic monolith. But this is what I've dedicated the last freaking year on the podcast to talking about, that big tech and Silicon Valley is not an ideological monolith. In fact, quite the opposite. There's a huge undercurrent of broadly pro-American, pro-Trump, pro-MAGA support within that world. But by the very existence of something like DEI, they were afraid to publicly come out and talk about it and demonstrate where their position lies. And then once that changed, once Elon changed that, then this huge flow emerged. So I've spent the last year trying to point this out, that there is way more alignment in these worlds between the Trump right, the heritage American, nativist, as people call it, which is, I'm like, why is being nativist a slur? Yes, we're nativist. Every single country in the world is nativist. We're nativist too. But I've been saying from the very beginning that you have to disambiguate between the Google, the Apple, the big tech that genuinely is, as who was it was saying at the beginning? Was it Bannon's video? That these people genuinely do hate America, hate Americans, and have cooperated with the whole NGO complex because they believe in it. They want to see America treated as an economic zone that they can harvest from. But that is not all of the tech world. This is why we talked about things like the Gundo world. The Gundo guys. They're part of the tech right. And every single one of them that I've followed has been exactly in alignment with all of the new right guys on this issue. I'm not here to defend the tech CEOs. I'm trying to countervail the black pillars who want to tell you that these are just subversive enemies who've pretended to like you, who've pretended to value you just so they can pull you in and subvert you. Those guys who insist on fapping over every possible negative view they can encounter. Those guys got to go. No fucking black pilling. Because I've seen a lot of people who are now really demoralized because of all of this, because they genuinely believe what these retards are trying to sell you. Don't black pill. You have far more allies and even potential friends than you realize. Here's one of these guys. He's an immigrant himself from Lebanon, I believe. Amjad Masad. He was actually on Tucker a few months ago. Very good conversation. He posted this in 2021. Very funny seeing who's looking over his shoulder here. He said, I landed in the United States 10 years ago with nothing but credit card debt. After one startup exit, one big tech job, and one unicorn, I genuinely believe that it wouldn't have been possible anywhere else in the world. Here are 10 things I love about this country. He is the Replit is the, come on. He's the CEO of Replit, civilizationalist. And he quote tweeted his thread here, and I'll link to it. You can go find this and read through the whole thread if you want. I've got a bunch more stuff to get through, so I'm already coming up on the 2-hour mark. So I'm not going to read through the whole thread at the moment, but it's good. You should go read it. He says, I believe America benefits from immigration, but there needs to be basic standards. Immigrants must appreciate America, its values, and institutions. That doesn't mean you need to adore Biden. No one does. But it means you can't bring with you nepotism or any of the other dysfunction that likely made you leave your origin country. I wrote about U.S. values I appreciate below. Immigrants must assimilate. Learn to speak English fluently. Learn basic history of the country and go to at least one ball game a year. Also, preferably avoid ethnic enclaves, which delays the process of assimilation. Finally, observe cultural norms and elevate social trust. Don't take advantage of Americans' kindness and pay it forward. When a crisis calls for collective action, make sure to step up and do your part. The opposite of all of this leads to bad societal outcomes. This is backed by research from Robert Putnam of Harvard, Diversity and Community in the 21st Century. Jake here says, anyone that embodies certain ideals will be tolerated, if not embraced, by many red-blooded Americans and allowed to live here and prosper. Anyone that pretends that America isn't largely white Western European and its founding stock, present and future, will experience an immune response. Again, this guy is broadly just kind of like a 90s neoliberal. That's sort of the default mode that he comes from. There's so much that we can work with. So now I've got a few different really interesting statements from Elon here. So Richard Anania, who I have volunteered to be the first man launched on a rocket into the sun, says he just completely steps on his dick here. I'm sorry for reading the Hanania post, but you guys, the context is great. He says, imagine you're a right-wing populist and we're always insecure that the vast majority of smart people don't agree with you. Then the greatest entrepreneur of our time enters the political arena. He's smarter than any liberal who looks down on you, and you finally have hope. The libs were just midwits. The real smart people know the score. He helps defeat the left in 2024. You found a new hero and all is right in the world. Then, suddenly, over Christmas, he starts denigrating you over your deepest beliefs in the same terms as the leftists you thought he was fighting. Except he's much more explicit than they ever were. His successful friends think similarly. It suddenly starts to dawn on you that smart people are naturally opposed to what you believe in. No matter what disagreements they might have with one another, or what fields they're in, or what professional incentives they face, they all agree that anti-foreigner politics is wrong and morally revolting. How do you recover from this? There are two paths. Acknowledge you are wrong and support an open immigration policy. Realize that your opposition to high-skilled immigration in particular is a result of some deep misunderstanding of how the world works or an unmet psychological need. Or you can double down on populism, use the same vapid talking points of nation, not an economy that are too stupid for one to even know where to begin in rebutting them, and decide the only way you'll ever get what you want is going to war with everyone in society with half a brain. Intelligence itself is the problem. Your feelings are the only things that count. I get the appeal of racism. I've been known to indulge in it from time to time. But once you're keeping scientists and engineers out of your country, you've gone down the wrong path. Take this opportunity to reflect. This is... Final Fornier says, if I didn't know what's coming, I'd quit the stream. So yes, again, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for exposing you to this absolute dysgenic cretin. However, all of that was worth it because Elon directly, he's not even tagged in this. And he felt inclined to come out and directly countersignal this. Question mark, question mark. I don't support an open immigration policy at all. I support a highly selective immigration policy. Immigration should be limited to those who will obviously contribute far more than they take. And Robert Sterling, Powerful Mutual, had one of the greatest threads on this H1B abuse. Really, really long. H1B data mega thread, 10 million views. Demonstrating how this entire program is just rife with fraud and abuse. Like criminal levels of fraud and abuse. And Elon replied to it and said, easily fixed by raising the minimum salary significantly and adding a yearly cost for maintaining the H1B. More on this in just a minute. Because this proposition that Elon is making here is to the right of the 2022 GOP. Even people who were loudly flipping the fuck out about Elon prior to this weren't necessarily making recommendations or even thinking about recommendations for this. But this is an extremely restrictionist view on the H1B, short of just abolishing it altogether. Making it materially more expensive to hire from overseas than domestically. So raise the minimum salary significantly. Up and well into the six figures, he indicated in other posts. And add a yearly cost for maintaining the H1B. If you're blackpilling about this, recognize this is Elon's position on it. And I'm telling you, this has been the generally accepted position on this from even the most liberal members of the MAGA-friendly Silicon Valley world. He says, I've been very clear that the program is broken and needs major reform. And he has been very clear all along. Now, I said this the other day. I'm going to give you guys a fantastic conspiracy theory here. I'm still, I don't know, it's like recreational belief for me right now. But I'm very open to the possibility that we've been massively psyoped over the last few days. So I said this the other day. I said, Elon is a lolbert. He always has been. He's still very useful to us. The collective reaction to him has just demonstrated to me that people were under the illusion he's something he's not, never has been, and never will be. As a pro H1B immigrant lolbert, he saved a bunch of lives in Western North Carolina, got Trump elected, and opened up this platform for us to completely obliterate the legacy press and create the vibe shift. He's already proven that he can be a tremendous asset to us while still being a pro H1B immigrant lolbert. Now, this has been my basic perception of him. However, Bennett's phylactery discovered something very interesting. Elon Musk said the following in a German-language editorial in Die Welt, endorsing AfD, which makes his positions on H1B and civic nationalism in general over the last 72 hours much more interesting. This is quoting from Elon. Immigration and national identity. Germany has opened its borders to a very large number of migrants. While this was done with humanitarian intent, it led to significant cultural and social tensions. The AfD is committed to a controlled immigration policy that gives priority to the integration and preservation of German culture and security. It is not about xenophobia, but about Germany not losing its identity in the pursuit of globalization. A nation must preserve its core values and cultural heritage in order to remain strong and united. A nation must preserve its core values and cultural heritage in order to remain strong and united. Sorry, I wasn't sharing the tab here. Let me say that one more time. This is what Elon Musk wrote with respect to Germany. A nation must preserve its core values and cultural heritage in order to remain strong and united. Okay, now first of all, we got the joke. I made Grok helped me make a Baron meme. Now do the Tropic Thunder copy pasta so they think you're really mad, but fuck it up so they also think you're retarded. This is very, very interesting because there's a couple of ways you can read this. One of them is like the standard retarded, I don't know, doom fapper, black pillar perspective, which is, oh, he thinks Germany is a nation, but he doesn't think America is. No, Americans never get any of this, just Germany. The other countries. He doesn't think America deserves this. That could be. But what has been the outcome, and very predictably so, what has been the outcome of the past week? The conversation on immigration, the publicly accepted conversation on legal immigration, has gone from should we have borders to how drastically are we going to reduce the H1B program, or are we going to abolish it altogether? Elon's made it very clear, both explicitly and reading between the lines, that he favors a drastically restricted net immigration position. The elimination of all illegal immigration and all the fraud and abuse of the legal processes. And when Chief Autist himself says, I want the 0.01% of top engineering talent, and I want to be able to cull all of that from the world and bring it to America for the sake of the American economy with the future that's coming over the next couple of years. When he talks about the elite of the elite in engineering talent, there's a threshold here that we can't even comprehend. The average person can't comprehend the actual genuinely elite talent. Now, yes, high skilled has obviously always been used as a euphemism for like, can type on a computer. But again, what I'm telling you, that view of big tech is not one that is shared by the MAGA supporting Silicon Valley world. I've shown you guys a whole bunch of examples of this. So you don't just have to take my word for it. So the net effect of this whole thing, very, very predictably, after this sort of cycle has played itself out time and time and time again, is that the national conversation on immigration has moved wildly to the restrictionist end. The H1B program's abuses have been massively amplified. Even people who didn't even know what it was or were ambivalent toward it before are now like, wow, this thing is fucked up. We need to get rid of it altogether. That's been the net effect of everything here. And it was very predictable that this is exactly how things were going to go. If you've been on Twitter for the last year, you've seen this cycle play out time and time again. It just so happens that every single thing Elon does, the net effect of it is wildly in the American sovereigntist direction. Is that intentional or conscious? We're squarely into deep 5D chess land here. But what's significant about this and his position endorsing AFD is, as I strongly recommend going to becoming a Patreon supporter of Tom Luongo and listening to his most recent market report. Because he talked about this and I agreed with, was shouting at my phone, agreeing with basically every single thing he said on this. But Elon endorsing AFD has the chance to drastically swing German politics against the EU. The EU very much does not want Elon endorsing AFD because AFD has the opportunity to radically shake up German politics, which will splinter the EU, right when the EU is trying to get everyone all on board together to crash the global economy so that they can benefit from it and they can install the entire world is run through the European Central Bank and IMF model. The actual elimination of central banking and private banking altogether, and just one central bank. Elon, stepping into German politics, has thrown a gigantic spoke in the wheel for the globalist regime. There's no way around that. And he's doing this while arguing blood and soil nationalism in a German newspaper. This is as someone replied when I reacted to this, someone replied and said, oh, this is, why isn't he more explicit about it? This is as explicit as you could get. If you're writing in a popular newspaper in Germany, a nation must preserve its core values and cultural heritage in order to remain strong and united. So like I said, I told you that my position on this has been that Elon is basically a lolbert, but he's a very useful lolbert to us. But there's a very interesting 5D chess story that could be told here. And shout out to Scott Adams, I'm going to adopt this as my recreational belief for the time being. You're welcome to join me in that or not. Now back to one of the other points that he made, talking about applying a tax to H1Bs to make them artificially more expensive, to disincentivize them as a tool for cheap labor to undermine Americans. Friend of the show, Catholic Orthodoxy, also known as Politically Catholic in the chat here, he said there should be a tariff on imported labor, which is exactly what Elon is proposing. Here's the fun of this. Calling it a tariff sets up a showdown between the Civil Rights Act and the taxing power of Congress, where the taxing power would triumph. By setting up a situation where SCOTUS either has to deal a death blow precedent to the Civil Rights Act or the taxation power, the Civil Rights Act would lose. And the kicker? Trump doesn't need Congress for a tariff. So to modify the H1B program as is, there's certain things that Trump can do, but to abolish the program would require Congress. But Trump doesn't need Congress to apply a tariff to H1B labor. I said, LMAO, wouldn't it be delicious if after all of this, Elon is largely responsible for breaking the back of the Civil Rights Act? Because Elon is the one talking about, how did he put it? Back here, he said, add a yearly cost for maintaining the H1B. That yearly cost can be a tariff. We can call it a tariff. Trump said that that tariff is the most beautiful word in the English language. And the downstream effect of that would be dealing a death blow precedent to the Civil Rights Act. How can you possibly be blackpilled nowadays, man? You've got to be a special kind of retarded. Another guy I want to highlight who's been very, very good in all of this is Indian Bronson. Now, I know there's lots of very strong opinions about this guy, but he has been absolutely bang on, firing off bangers over the past several days on this issue. And he reacted to this. There were so many tweets that I could do an entire show just going through his Twitter timeline, touching on all the different things he's gone into. I just picked a couple. One of them is regarding this specific thing we're talking about here, with Elon posting in the German newspaper. He said it does make his comments on H1B and civic nationalism over the last 72 hours much more interesting. He says it does, and I think it makes it certain that Elon Musk simply means what he says. He's motivated by a desire for global talent, which axiomatically is not in America. And he does not want large-scale immigration that would culturally mix up America and subvert its own people. I don't think the guy saying Italy needs to remain Italian and vocally supporting AfD in Germany to do remigration wants to crush Americans under a wave of Indian replacements. And it's that simple. Honestly, it's even more 5D chess, I think, to say it's the other way around. Here's the man himself. Not Indian Bronson, but politically Catholic. He says it sets up a situation where the courts either have to curtail the taxing power of Congress or the Civil Rights Act. They're loath to curtail the taxing power. It's beautiful. Excellent. Tariff is truly the most beautiful word in the English language. Here's another interesting take from Indian Bronson. So he's an Indian guy, immigrant to the United States, very much in this gray tribe, Silicon Valley tech world. And he has been incredibly outspoken defending Americans' right to have their country. And that Americans come before immigrants in America. He says, some years ago, I offered this operationalization of the immigration debate. A country's power is a function in three variables: capacity, scale, and unity. My theory is that you can pursue each, but at the expense of at least one of the others, and that the most important is unity. So P equals F of C, S, and U. Capacity is human or natural resources. Scale is approximately productive population. Unity is a measure of self-similarity. The U.S. polity's chosen regime is to supplement lagging scale, even at the expense of lower unity. This will prove fatal. He continues, you could identify proxies and quantify these things. Maybe unity is how many people natively speak the same language. Capacity is the birth weight of infants, etc. The point is you would produce an optimization surface. Maybe it's linear, but probably not. My guess is that there are many, many, many tempting local power maxima to traverse upwards towards by sacrificing unity and maxing on scale and capacity. Who doesn't want to be bigger? Who doesn't want to be able to do more? But if you do these things, the low unity paths, you basically come to a point where it's very, very hard to move around, and the paths are narrow and the drops are huge, and you can completely fall into zero power situations because you fall off the cliff, basically. Whereas if you pursue unity above all, the ascent is slower on capacity and scale, but much more manageable, and you can actually get to the global maximum. Strongly recommend following Indian Bronson at Indian_Bronson. And I'm going to put a link to this here in the description, or in the podcast description. It'll be on the King Pilled Substack, to this interview he did on Moment of Zen podcast, which is very representative of this gray tribe, MAGA-friendly Silicon Valley world. It's been one of the big things I've listened to get the temperature of this world. There's like this one. There's the All In podcast. There's Mark Andreessen's Twitter feed. There's a whole bunch of different places like this. But in this one, it was debating immigration policy with Indian Bronson. One of the best takes on this is from 3 weeks ago. They were talking about this. The way that Indian Bronson lays all of this out, I know there's a lot of people who don't like him out there. I'm just saying, everything he's tweeted on this issue and the way he lays out this case on the podcast here is very, very good. Go listen to it. Moment of Zen podcast, debating immigration policy with India and Bronson. I'll put the link in the Substack, and it'll be in the podcast description if you consume this via podcatcher form. I'm not going to play it here right now because I'm streaming a YouTube thing on YouTube, and that YouTube doesn't like that. Got a good post here from Devin Erickson. He's reacting to the Robert Sterling H1B data mega thread, which so go find the Devin Erickson post in the King Pilled Substack master thread of all the links. If you want to go dig through this H1B data mega thread, I strongly recommend it. Downloaded 5 years of H1B data from the USDOL website, 4 million plus records, and spent the day crunching data. He's got a bunch of graphs and data and everything. This is Devin Erickson's take. The ideal version of anything exists only in our heads. Our actual lives are determined by what is. Here below is a deep dive into the H-1B visa program, not as it could be, nor as it should be, nor as it might be, but as it is, right now, today, in this universe. Like every other federal program that we've turned our microscopes on, it turns out on close examination to be a massive scam. If the purpose of a system is what it does, then the purpose of H-1B isn't to allow the United States to poach world-class talent from other countries. It is to allow an end run around the abolition of indentured servitude. That's the ground truth. Debating what we would like the program to be in an ideal world is a bit like debating about how we would like to decorate a house that is currently on fire. The real debate is between those who think importing indentured servants is a good idea and those who don't. Needless to say, there's plenty of self-interest on both sides. I don't have a dog in this fight. I was managed out of Silicon Valley years ago for my political leanings, and I don't see myself going back, even if the prohibition on white males, and white male libertarians is somehow lifted. I am now a professional writer, and by the nature of that profession, I am in competition with the entire world in a borderless fashion. So far, I'm not worried because the second and third worlds aren't exactly bringing their A game. Despite not having a stake, I do have an opinion because I like society. It's where I keep all my stuff. And I cannot help but notice what has happened historically to societies that displace their free workers with slave labor, literally or in essence. I will not give my opinion on what the ideal work visa policy should be because that would be as relevant as the color I would like to paint a burning house. It's very easy to get extremely angry at other people about what we would like the ideal world to be before even examining if we possess the means to reach it. What's clear is that now, nominally American companies are able to contract foreign labor at sub-market salaries by offering an additional benefit that they do not pay for, which does not belong to them: the right to enter and live in America. That right, and the right to offer it to others, does not belong to corporations or federal bureaucrats, but to the American body politic. And therefore, it must be extended, not as part of a total compensation package offered by an employer, but on the basis of whether or not that deal benefits the American body politic as a whole. Currently, as a whole, it does not, and anyone who says otherwise is a liar or a fool. H-1B cannot be a cost-saving measure for American employers the way it is now. At the very least, this financial incentive must be removed by making it significantly more expensive to employ visa workers than citizens. My initial impulse is to say double, but that would depend on the details. This is merely a minimum first step. There are still significant discussions to be had about the second and third order impacts of introducing skilled workers from other cultures and societies. These cannot be hand-waved away, they must be debated. But first, we must put out the burning house. And last take on this issue for the day, before I've got a couple other very interesting things for you guys. From Powerful Mutual, Jim Sharp. He says, Trump has the impossible task of placating two sides of a party that are in an existential civil war. Now, okay, before I do that, let me read this, what he's responding to. So, Trump shared a screenshot of Elon tweeting, anyone of any race, creed, or nationality who came to America and worked like hell to contribute to this country will forever have my respect. America is the land of freedom and opportunity. Fight with every fiber of your being to keep it that way. Trump shared that. AF Post, Signal boosted it. Catgirl Kulak said the people didn't vote for Trump for his stated positions. They voted for the fascist racist dictator who actually cares about Americans the media told us he was. And if he keeps up the 90s Democrat routine, he'll be eaten alive for it. This isn't like some people voted for the fascist racist dictator. The majority of people did not. It's just a plain fact. And this is what Jim says. Trump has the impossible task of placating two sides of a party that are in an existential civil war. On one hand, you have the boomer Republicans whose material and social lives benefited greatly from the liberal myths of neutrality, a nation of immigrants, and the Civil Rights Act. It's encoded into their belief systems that these ideologies are good and natural. On the other hand, you have the under 45 American nationalists of the new right who receive no benefit from the existing paradigm and want to blow it up. The new right is ascending and will claim control of the party at some point, but for the next 4 years, don't freak out over every Trump statement. He has a lot of hedging he has to do to keep the peace and get things done in real life. And Not So Friendly Lawyer says he named Vance for a reason, people. And this is the perspective that we have to keep here. You can have your really passionate opinions about the issues themselves, but you also have to recognize the realities of coalition politics and actual practical governing in real time. And if you're feeling black-pilled, if you want to doom-fap, step back, acknowledge the trajectory. Acknowledge things like the fact that this conversation is even happening, and Trump named Vance for a reason. This is the future. Yeah, here's a good point. Robert Prevost in the chat says, I'm a little behind on the stream, but on Elon igniting this firestorm, the purpose of a controversy is what it does. Very well stated. Indeed. Let's talk about Home Alone. I had this for before Christmas and didn't actually get around to it. So it's a little out of date now, but I think you guys will still like it. Do me a favor and hit the like button. This is from @ByPeterParadise. Home Alone is a Christian movie about Kevin finding faith. He starts the movie in a non-praying house, making an evil wish to Santa, an idol, for his family to disappear. While at first he enjoys his time without his family, he has a yearning in his heart to be reunited with their love. He consults a Santa impersonator asking for help, but comes to realize that this is a false god who can't help him. Disheartened, he enters a peaceful and beautiful church where he encounters Old Man Marley, a patriarch who has inspired fear in him in the past. Marley approaches Kevin with pierced hands, asking Kevin if he has been good, and tells him a version of the prodigal son story. Kevin returns from the church changed. He makes dinner and prays to God at home before his final confrontation between good and evil. The home is defending us now. The home is defending us now, a Christian household. Not sure exactly what that was supposed to mean, but I kind of get the gist of what he's saying. Kevin's victory is not just over the robbers, but his sinful nature, and by conquering, he's reunited with his family and gets to experience the true meaning of Christmas. There's the pierced hand. Sherman McCoy had said, the discourse about the Home Alone house has me thinking about the movie, easily one of the most sincere and least irony-poisoned movies ever made. This is why it's become an enduring classic. And I'm not going to read through all of this here. I'm going to recommend you guys, again, go to King Pilled Substack or go to the audio version on the podcast and the notes with the links and go read through all of these. He says it's worth checking out this version of the screenplay where Marley spends 4 pages talking church, how he looks forward to reuniting with his wife in heaven and telling Kevin to pray. And he's got a number of these here. The message is hidden in plain sight. Go to the master thread, read all the links, read that one in particular. Lastly, I've got a couple of very interesting very interesting science, weird science things. So this first one here is Chris Ryan explains the sweaty t-shirt study, surprising insights on attraction. I'm going to hope that YouTube lets me stream this because it's very good. Only 1 minute and 41 seconds.
This guy, Bruce Wedekind in Switzerland, who did research that's become known as the sweaty t-shirt study. He wanted to understand why women's sense of smell is so much stronger than men's. Women can smell about 7 times more than men. So he wanted to understand why is this? And his hypothesis was that women are picking up information about men's immune system from their pheromones, from the way they smell. He got a bunch of guys who were deficient in one part of their immune response and then a bunch of women who were also deficient in one part. The immune response, it's called immune histocompatibility index. And let's say it has 5 elements. So they would find a bunch of guys who were low in 1 or 2 or number 3 or number 4, whatever, and women who had the same different deficiencies. The hypothesis was that a woman who's low in factor 3 won't be attracted to men who are low in factor 3. They'll be attracted to men who are high in factor 3 because then the babies will be healthy, right? So he gets these guys to wear t-shirts for 3 days and nights with no deodorant, no showers, no soap, nothing. Then puts the t-shirts in plastic bags. Then he has the women smell the bags and mark on a piece of paper how attractive they thought.
If my wife is still listening, I guarantee you she's retching right now at the thought of smelling 3-day worn t-shirts in plastic bags.
The men were, based only on the smell of the t-shirts, right? And he found that with 80% of the women, they chose as he predicted, that they chose the men high in the thing that they were low in, and they avoided the men who were low in the thing that they were low in. But in about 20%, they seemed to be choosing randomly. So he went back and looked at the women again and found that those 20% were on birth control pills. Whoa. So the birth control pill short circuits that response.
Whoa.
If you as a woman, one of our 5 women listening, if you're on birth control, or to the vast majority of men, if your wife is on birth control, there are some truly unappreciated, massive downstream consequences of birth control. This is a very big one. I've heard a lot about this in the past of women who was generally told from the perspective of men. They got together with their wife while she was, or with the woman while she was on the pill, and then she stopped, and then suddenly she got really, like, she just turned into a different person, and it seemed like there was no attraction there, and there was no attraction there because this is the effect of the pill. It is so destructive to women for so many different reasons, but this is a weird one most people don't consider, a social effect of it. So if you're a man looking for a woman and you find one and she's on the pill, tread very carefully. Vulpus Persona says, when I was a fishmonger, had a younger coworker who would always ask me if she could put her nose in my armpit. That's a very strange kink. All right, last thread for the day. This one's going to call back. It'll remind you guys to some older episodes we've done talking about this issue. This is from Darshak Rana on Twitter. Never seen him before, but this thread's interesting. Yeah, Jill in the Green says, also, if a single woman is just on the pill, that's a pretty bad sign for other reasons. Yes, indeed. In 1994, this man exposed reality's greatest secret. Human consciousness directly shapes physical matter. Researchers worldwide mocked him, called him a fraud, until he showed the lab results. Meet Masaru Emoto. He wasn't a physicist or a biologist. He was a simple man with a radical question. What if human thoughts, emotions, and words could change the physical world? And he had a plan. Emoto began his research with a single element, water. Why? Water covers 70% of Earth and 70% of your body. If thoughts affect matter, water would be the ultimate test. But how do you prove something so invisible? Emoto's answer, freeze it. He collected water samples from around the world. Clean rivers, polluted lakes, bottled water, tap water. He spoke words to them, played music, exposed them to emotions. Then he froze the water and studied the ice crystals under a microscope. What he found stunned him. Water that was exposed to positive words, like love or gratitude, formed intricate, stunningly beautiful crystals. But water exposed to negativity, words like hate or fool, produced chaotic, fractured, ugly formations. The difference was undeniable. Yeah, Jill in the Green says, all the crunchy ladies know about the water test. That's right. Shout out to our crunchy ladies. We would do well to pay attention to the crunchy ladies. So here's thank you, wisdom, truth, eternal, peace, I love you, angel, and then you fool, evil, you make me sick, and then here's polluted water before prayer and polluted water after prayer. Now, I don't know if these are exactly real, but this drives at the point. I've seen all these pictures. I've seen all the studies and stuff. This is exactly the phenomena that you'll see. It didn't stop there. He played classical music to the water. The result, breathtakingly beautiful crystals. Then he played heavy, aggressive music. The crystals, distorted and broken like shards of anger frozen in time.
So to experiment that, what I did was to make the water listen to the certain music. Because music is a certain vibration. So in the middle, it's a water, just distilled water. And it's a crystal. It's a simple hexagon shape. And I let...
How will the crystals change when water is exposed to music? In order to maintain consistency, we use distilled water throughout the experiment.
Let me show you the most beautiful Modern Butterfly. Maria Callas, you know, the opera singer. We don't have any health, we don't have vitality. You enjoy, you're sad. We love music.
When Emoto published his results in The Hidden Messages in Water, the backlash was immediate. Pseudoscience, critics cried. How can water have emotions? But Emoto wasn't making claims about water's emotions. He was revealing something much deeper. He believed water was a mirror for human consciousness. Our thoughts, words, and feelings leave an energetic imprint on the world around us. And water, with its fluidity and sensitivity, reflects that imprint in its crystalline structures. Still, scientists doubted him. So Emoto raised the stakes. He invited independent researchers to replicate his experiments. They used water, microscopes, and controlled conditions. Some results matched Emoto's, others didn't. But one thing was clear, the idea couldn't be dismissed outright. In 2003, Emoto conducted an experiment with 2,000 people. He placed bottles of water before them. On one bottle, the word love. On another, the word hate. Participants meditated, focusing their intentions on the bottles. The crystals spoke volumes. This is from Dean Radin, very interesting name to note here. Double-blind test of the effects of distant intention on water crystal formation. The abstract says the hypothesis that water treated with intention can affect ice crystals formed from that water was pilot tested under double-blind conditions. A group of approximately 2,000 people in Tokyo focused positive intentions toward water samples located inside an electromagnetically shielded room in California. The group was unaware of similar water samples set aside in a different location as controls. Ice crystals formed from both sets of water samples were blindly identified and photographed by an analyst, and the resulting images were blindly assessed for aesthetic appeal by 100 independent judges. Results indicated that crystals from the treated water were given higher scores for aesthetic appeal than those from the control water, lending support to the hypothesis. The love water formed beautiful symmetrical patterns. The hate water jagged, chaotic, and broken. People began to question, if thoughts and words affect water, what are they doing to us, to our relationships, to our planets? Emoto's experiments touched on ancient wisdom. From Buddhist chants to Christian prayers, many cultures have long believed in the power of intention. His work gave a modern visual proof of what we've intuitively known for centuries. But was it enough to silence the skeptics? Critics pointed to flaws in Emoto's methods. How do we know the crystals weren't cherry-picked? What about peer review? Emoto didn't argue. He said, if you don't believe me, try it yourself. The truth doesn't need defending. Many people did. Teachers conducted Emoto's experiments with students. Families wrote love and hate on jars of rice soaked in water. The results were eerily consistent. The love jars stayed fresh. The hate jars rotted. Coincidence or consciousness?
Dr. Emoto has conducted another interesting experiment. He placed rice into 3 glass beakers and covered it with water. And then every day for a month, he said, "Thank you" to one beaker, "You're an idiot" to the second, and the third one he completely ignored. After 1 month, the rice that had been thanked began to ferment, giving off a strong, pleasant aroma. The rice in the second beaker turned black, and the rice that was ignored began to rot. Dr. Emoto thinks that this experiment provides an important lesson, especially with regard to how we treat children. We should take care of them, give them attention, and converse with them. Indifference does the greatest harm.
Tell some dreamy story, but
Really makes you think about saying a blessing over your food, doesn't it? Emoto's legacy is polarizing. To some, he's a visionary who proved the power of human intention. To others, he's a pseudoscientist who muddied the waters of real research. But one question remains: what if he was right? The implications were staggering.
From my colleague Ali Crum's,
This is
there
Andrew Huberman.
are actually beautiful data on this from my colleague Ali Crum's laboratory at Stanford, that if you believe a food is nutritious and good for you, it actually has better impact on your physiology. You can't tell yourself that the garbage is good for you, right? But there's a significant scaling up of the positive response that's associated with dopamine and hormonal cascades, which we can talk about in a moment. In the same way, if one adopts a sort of a Carol Dweckian growth mindset approach, okay, it's not about receiving the reward, that the more strain I feel, the more effort that I'm putting in, the closer I'm getting to my goal, that over time will become a rewarding state such that one will pursue states of
Yeah, so this is, I think, why people are so obsessed in some sense with the search for fundamental meaning. And the other person thinks in 300 years, this is going to be a cathedral.
They're actually
If words, emotions, and sounds could alter water, what about humans? We are 70% water. Could our thoughts, our consciousness be shaping our health, our environment, and even our reality? My takeaway, Emoto's message wasn't just about water, it was about you. Your words matter, your intentions matter, you matter. If you pour love into your thoughts, you create beauty. If you pour hate, you create chaos. So, as Scott S. so concisely says here, black pilling causes rot. And this is why we say no fucking black pilling. You could call it The Secret, the Law of Attraction, the abundance mindset, all these sorts of things. These are all flawed attempts to get at this truth, which is that we are creators created by a creator to create. And what we direct our minds to is what we create. So if we direct our minds toward doom fapping and black pilling and demoralizing and end of the world predicting, that's what we create. That is what we manifest, to use the buzzword. If we direct our minds toward optimism and prosperity and humility and growth and beauty, those are the things that we will manifest. Anyways, guys, I appreciate you showing up for another episode of the Astrolabe. Do me a favor and hit the like button on your way out. Appreciate all the super chats. There was one here. I shared it, but I didn't say anything about it. Cordy ZZ7. Some more leaf bucks. I appreciate it. I will add the leaf bucks to my stash. Says 40K proved correct again. Satire. I appreciate all you guys. Thank you for showing up to listen to me prattle along here. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you like what I'm doing and you want to support it, it's very much appreciated. There's links in the description. You can go to buymecoffee.com/kingpilled. There's a Cash App link in there. It's Kingpilled with $Kingpilled. I don't know exactly how Cash App works, but I set one up. And there's also some other sponsors in the description you guys can go check out. It's our second to last episode of 2024. I'll be back tomorrow for the very last episode of 2024, so we can launch 2025 on a good note. So for now, hit the like button, follow me on Twitter at RealKingPill, join the Kingpill Discord at kingpill.com, and I give you Hulk.
When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next president of the United States, enough was enough, and I said, let Trumpomania